Chapter 960. Buzz. The huge golden pillar of light was like a lighthouse, illuminating the sky and sprinkling a golden glow under the blue sky. When it landed on the white clouds, it was as if the sky was engraved with golden runes. It was incomparably gorgeous. The brilliant brilliance was reflected in everyone's eyes, causing them to exclaim in amazement. The runes on the huge pillar in the sea also came to life, constantly flowing on the huge black metal pillar. It was as if the golden light from the sky was shining on the huge pillar. Such a brilliant scene intoxicated everyone. When the golden light sprinkled on their bodies, they felt an inexplicable energy drilling into their bodies, relieving their fatigue. Even their life source seemed to have been nourished. Taking a breath can prolong my life. Chu Yingzhan's pretty face was full of intoxication. She hurriedly took a few more breaths. She could feel that her life source was growing at a slow speed. In other words, under the nourishment of the golden light, her lifespan was extended a little. According to the ratio, taking a breath can increase your lifespan by 10 years. Yuanshi took a deep breath, his whole body trembling slightly. Yue was shocked when she heard this. She breathed heavily as if she was convulsing. Everyone was speechless. Speaking of which, this girl was from the demon world. According to what Yun Nuoshing said in the Ninth Heaven Galaxy, people from the demon world had short lives. Yuer's lifespan might not be very long. However, with Yun Nuoshing around, they didn't care too much. Anyway, that ultimate Siscon wouldn't let that happen. Bang bang, bang. It was unknown where the sound came from, but it seemed to come from this secret place, from the entire space. After 3 muffled sounds, the pillar of creation suddenly erupted with an even larger golden beam of light, drilling a huge hole in the sky. The range of the beam of light expanded to the edge of the ocean. The golden light that descended from the sky became even more dazzling, to the point where it was almost impossible to open one's eyes. It was as if they were in the sun, surrounded by golden light from all directions, causing Ziyan and the others to quickly close their eyes. The dazzling golden light lasted for a long time, a full half an hour. During this time, it was as if they were sunbathing. Yuan Shi and the others even flipped around and basked in the sun on their back. It seemed that even if they were blind, they couldn't stop Mo Yen and Mo Yen from doing what they wanted. After half an hour, the golden light gradually extinguished. When the light weakened to a certain extent, everyone opened their eyes. The rich golden light in the sky dimmed visibly in their line of sight. In the end, it became a clear blue sky. The white clouds were still lying lazily on the blue curtain. In the distance, the flowing golden runes on the pillar of creation became still again. They were engraved on it like a brand. There was no more movement. Yun Nuoshing flashed from afar and appeared in front of everyone. This one took a bit of time, Yuanshi said casually. The previous few bios were done after a while. Yun Nuoshing nodded and yawned. He looked a little tired. Only then did everyone realize that 1/3 of his long hair had turned white. In other words, he had used a lot of energy just now. There's a little problem. Yun Nuoshing had just said something when he yawned again. He stretched out his hand and rubbed his eyes, saying, I looked at the map earlier and combined it with the places where the pillars of creation are arranged. I thought of something a little. Sourcepeak territory and the other 4 origin territories should have 12 pillars of creation forming a protective formation together. In other words, there are 3 other places besides the ones we know. Do you know where those 3 places are? Ming murmured and asked. Yun Nuoshing nodded and said, I remember most of them. At least, I remember the ones in the Kuan origin territory. It shouldn't be a problem. These 12 pillars are the origin pillars. They are like energy hubs that connect all the remaining pillars of creation. They connect their energy and communicate with each other. The 12 origin pillars of the 4 origin territories and the 9 origin pillars of the Divine Land are also connected. Finally, they interweave into an energy curtain that covers the entire realm of the gods. However, in normal times, the origin pillars between the major territories don't exchange large amounts of energy. They only have that channel. By maintaining the stability of the origin pillars, the other pillars of creation will also be stable. But now, Yun Nuoshing turned to look at the pillar of creation in the distance. His voice sounded a little strange. There's a slight problem. It's old. Has it been in disrepair for a long time? Yuan Shi asked. Yes. After all, I, the guardian, have died. Apart from the 9 origin pillars in the divine land, the others haven't been repaired for 70 eras. It's normal for there to be some small problems. In the future, the pillars of creation don't seem to have chosen a new maintainer. Yun Nuoshing scratched his head. He didn't understand why the pillars of creation chose him, or why they didn't look for a new maintainer. Seeing that the pillar was about to break, why didn't they look for a doctor to treat it? The origin pillar won't break, right? Yuan Shi asked again. Well, it won't break, but it will cause the realm of the gods to start collapsing. Rubbing his ears, Yun Nuoshing sighed. It's like a big fish tank with hundreds of plugs blocking the same number of drains. 12 of them are the largest. Of course, the origin pillars won't break, and the pillars of creation won't be damaged either. They're just plugs. If the plugs are pulled out, the water will leak out, but the plugs won't have any problems. It's just a leak. Now, that fish tank is the space of the realm of the gods, and the water is the realm of the gods and everything that exists in the realm of the gods. Do you understand? Everyone nodded. This description was very vivid. In other words, when the pillars of creation collapsed, both the realm of the gods and everything that existed in it would collapse. This one is still fine. It's just a flaw. It'll be fine after it's repaired. Hopefully, we won't see any problems with the other pillars of creation. If the core has a problem, it'll easily affect the other pillars of creation below, Yun Nuoshing said. If that's the case, shouldn't we speed up the process? Chu Yingzhan hurriedly waved her hand. These things hadn't been repaired or inspected for 70 eras, but the realm of the gods was still able to survive until today. She had to admit that they were really lucky. Hurry up and fix it. Don't let it collapse when the time comes. I don't want to die with so many people in the realm of the gods. If I really die with everyone in the realm of the gods one day, we'll all die when we go to the Yellow Springs together. Everyone was shocked. That's a scary thought. Yun Nuoshing's face darkened. This crazy girl's train of thought couldn't be stopped. What was that golden light just now? Oh, those. Yun Nuoshing raised her head and thought for a moment. Then, she said, it's the energy that the pillar of creation has accumulated over the past 70 eras. To be precise, it should be from the moment it started to malfunction, and the energy started to slowly clog up in the pillar. Yes, clog up, just like how the meridians are blocked. Then, the energy that was supposed to be fed back to the world remained in the pillar of creation. After countless years of precipitation, it formed energy similar to life essence. Won't it explode if it's blocked all the time? Chu Yingzhan and Mei Mao's eyes flashed. Yun Nuoshing took a deep breath. You'll explode if your meridians are blocked all the time. The pillar of creation will be in a similar situation, but it won't explode. Instead, it will break. Just like the plug I mentioned earlier, the one that will break will be this world. Yun Nuoshing yawned for a long time. She only managed to stop when her jaw was almost dislocated. Then, she sat down cross-legged to recover. It didn't take long. She rested for about 10 minutes. Actually, she wanted to rest for a while more. This was what everyone else wanted as well. The aura of life in this place was very strong. The golden light still had some residual aura. It was very smooth and comfortable to take a breath. However, after 10 minutes, Chu Yingzhan suddenly jumped up. She took out a token from her chest. It was an ordinary command medallion in the shape of a shield. There was nothing much to say about its shape, but at this moment, the command medallion was burning fiercely, and there was also an obscure soul strength passing through it. After sensing Chu Yingzhan's existence, that soul strength stuck to her body, causing a light to light up between her eyebrows. The expression of this crazy girl, who was usually noisy, instantly changed, becoming incomparably solemn. "My house exploded!" Chu Yingzhan exclaimed. Everyone fell to the ground together. Their faces were filled with black lines. Was there something wrong with this girl's brain? Would people usually say something like this when something happened at home? "My house really exploded." Seeing everyone's strange and surprised gazes, Chu Yingzhan became anxious. She began to dance. "We're surrounded. The enemy is at our gate. There are 4 or 5 major forces. Dummy, hurry up and send me back. My father is desperately calling for me. He's afraid that I'll be ambushed outside." However, after saying the last sentence, she couldn't help but laugh bitterly. She was probably the safest. Who could bypass Yun Nuoxing and kill her? "Do you need help?" Yuan. She patted his white robe and stood up. Although the Yuan family's territory is in the western region of China, they still have some businesses in other large regions. It won't be a problem to gather some help temporarily. The Nightwalker Alliance is everywhere. I can also gather a lot of help in a short time. Nightmare said proudly with her nose in the air. The Qin family can help. Qin Yen was very quiet. She stood tall and her black dress swayed. At this moment, she only said one sentence indifferently. Her words were light, but her feelings were deep. Among the group of people gathered here, once someone said that they were in trouble, they could put down everything and withdraw at any time. The relationship between the girls was also very good. Naturally, they wouldn't stand by and do nothing at this moment. "Ugh. I can't call anyone from the demon world. Sister Yingzhan, you can't help this time." Yu puffed up her cheeks and muttered. Little Moon sighed in annoyance and pinched her cheek. "You're already helping if you don't cause trouble." Yun Nuoxing muttered to herself for a moment. She shook her 2 amethyst earrings and said to Chu Yingzhan, "If you need, you should be able to call over 40 to 50 Emperor God powerhouses and a god." Oh, Sister Shui went to another world. But 40 to 50 Emperor God powerhouses shouldn't be a problem. Then, Yuan Shi and the others smiled bitterly. The young hall master just opened her mouth and said 40 to 50 Emperor God powerhouses and a god. Chu Yingzhan was also slightly taken aback. She suddenly quieted down, her beautiful eyes tightly looking at everyone as she sweetly smiled in an incomparably beautiful manner. "Let's go back and take a look first. If there's a need, we'll definitely ask. In any case, with Dumbo here, the worst-case scenario shouldn't occur." Hearing this, everyone chuckled and nodded. Yun Nuoxing scratched her head helplessly. Why was she treating him as a protective talisman? Was it to bring him along to ensure her safety? Because the Chu family seemed to have some kind of problem, everyone didn't delay. They immediately got up and rushed outside. A phoenix formed from energy appeared. This time, there was an additional strand of golden light in the phoenix's body. That was pure light element. Yun Nuoxing directly tore open the space and brought everyone into the void. Her speed could be said to be chasing the stars and the moon. In a flash, they appeared far away in the void. "We'll be there in half a day." After dealing with the matters in the space, Yun Nuoxing sat down to catch her breath. She turned her head and saw Chu Yingzhan's pretty face with a worried expression. She couldn't help but comfort her. "Don't worry, it'll be fine." Chu Yingzhan also smiled slightly. Her delicate body was slightly bent and she hugged her knees with both hands. Although she appeared to be very calm, everyone could more or less feel the fluctuations in her state of mind. After being together for so long, there weren't many things that could calm this crazy girl down. She had always been crazy. They had never seen her so calm and worried. Xian and Ming sat down next to her and whispered to each other, comforting Chu Yingzhan. They also took the time to throw a "Don't worry" look at Yun Nuoxing. He couldn't help but smile. Bing Er quietly moved over from the side and sat down next to him. Her long blue and golden hair hung down behind her, overlapping with Yun Nuoxing's colorful hair. She tilted her head slightly. Her sapphire-like Mei-Mao stared at him in a daze, causing his heart to skip a beat. "What's wrong?" Bing Er blinked at Mei-Mao, but didn't say anything. This made Yun Nuoxing feel a little awkward. He wanted to look away, but he still looked at her calmly. Bing Er rubbed her body and fell into Yun Nuoxing's arms. Half of her body lay on his lap, and her body curled up. "You're already a big girl, but you're still acting like a child." Yun Nuoxing couldn't help but chuckle. His gaze was gentle, and he reached out to rub her head. Perhaps the sudden incident with Chu Yingzhan had inexplicably touched this girl. Bing Er snorted and whispered, "I'm only 2 years old." Yun Nuoxing. Speaking of which, he was already used to Bing Er's beautiful appearance. He had forgotten that this girl was actually just born a few years ago. Yun Nuoxing spread his 6 wings and covered Bing Er's body. He lowered his head and looked at the side of this girl's face. His smile was gentle and doting, just like a father looking after his daughter who was usually cold and rarely softened. As soon as this thought came to his mind, his hand suddenly paused, and the expression on his face became a little stiff. However, before Bing Er noticed it, he recovered. "Speaking of which, I've unknowingly entered the role of a father?" Yun Nuoxing muttered in his heart. His cheeks trembled, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. For the past 70 years, he had many beauties by his side in every life, but he had never had a wife or a child. Even now, he was still a virgin. Well, he didn't feel that there was anything shameful about it, nor did he feel embarrassed to say it out loud. At this time, he only had quarter moon's memories, and in those memories, he rarely thought about such things. It wouldn't be wrong to say that he was really a blockhead and a rock. He knew what kind of person he was. Now that he had skipped countless steps and entered the role of a father, he had mixed feelings. However, it seemed that he could not escape in this life. Yun Nuoxing's heart was filled with all sorts of emotions. He stealthily turned his head to look at that girl, Ziyan. She was currently pulling Qi Ming and Chu Yingzhan to chat about girls' topics. He then looked at the egg in his soul and sighed. These 2 girls were much more formidable than little Guang. They had secretly left an imprint in his heart. By the time he reacted, he was already unwilling to erase that imprint. That meant that he probably couldn't escape this life. While his thoughts were running wild, someone touched his wings lightly, and a fragrant breeze entered his nose. Then, he felt a soft body sitting down next to him. He hurriedly turned his gaze and saw little Moon resting her head on his right shoulder. Her moon-like eyes were sparkling as she smiled playfully at him. Little Moon wrinkled her nose and pulled down a wing to cover herself. She smiled sweetly and snuggled into Yun Nuoxing's arms, just like how she used to hang on to her brother when she was young. She couldn't change this habit now, but the space in her brother's arms was usually occupied by someone else, so she could only snuggle into his arms when she was free. Looking at the 2 girls splitting him in half, Yun Nuoxing had a helpless smile on his face. No matter how old this girl was, she couldn't change this habit at all. No one spoke to break the silence. Yun Nuoxing turned into a statue and didn't dare to move, afraid that he would wake up the 2 girls who had fallen asleep at some point in time. Half a day passed in an instant. As the light of a teleportation formation flickered, a fiery red phoenix jumped out of the void and rushed into the space of the main realm. Thousands of miles high in the sky, a group of people stood up one after another. Below them, a huge city appeared. It was the scale of a real large-scale city, not smaller than the city in the center of the origin region. This city was decorated with a light green color. From the city walls to the floor tiles, they were all built with light green rock. Moreover, they weren't ordinary rocks. With Yun Nuoxing's eyesight, he could naturally see that these were all made with a type of level 6 or level 7 rock material that covered the entire city. The people who built this city back then were either rich and imposing or had holes in their brains. Just the scale of this city alone was enough to make him wonder how many materials were used to build this city. From Yun Nuoxing's point of view, this city was still relatively young. There were only faint traces of the passing of time, and it hadn't experienced any great changes in the era. Hence, it wasn't tainted with the dense aura of time. However, from the point of view of Xian and the others, this city was already quite old. To them, the aura it exuded was extremely ancient. At the very least, it should have a history of a few epochs. The Azure Emperor city was built very early. It was built as early as 135 epochs ago. We are the latecomers. Chu Yingzhan pointed at the green-colored city below and said. The layout of the various buildings in the city had some subtle traces. Others might not be able to tell, but Yun Nuoxing was able to see through it with a single glance. And in the green-colored rocks that were used to build the city, he could even see traces of energy within them. After taking a closer look, he couldn't help but laugh. I initially thought that this city was built by a prodigal son. Who would have thought that there would be such a special purpose behind it? At this moment, this city was enveloped by a layer of green-colored energy barrier that enveloped an area of 100 miles around the Azure Emperor city. Although the barrier seemed thin and weak, it caused people to feel an immense pressure that originated from their souls. However, Yun Nuoxing and the others weren't affected at all. That gigantic energy barrier had something to do with the traces of energy contained within the construction materials of this city. It was as though the entire city was used as a location to set up a formation. This is a city-protecting grand formation. Back then, the person who built the Azure Emperor city was a demigod sovereign. In his later years, when he was nearing the end of his lifespan, he used all his strength to build this majestic city and left behind a city-protecting grand formation. It's said that this grand formation can withstand a full-powered attack from a god emperor without collapsing. Chu Yingzhan and Mei Mao's eyes flickered. She had a deep understanding of this city, and at this moment, upon seeing the city-protecting grand formation, her countenance grew even heavier. The clan of the original owner of the Azure Emperor city has already declined. My foolish father wandered the myriad gods' realm for a period of time and chose to settle down here. This way we would have a place to settle down in the 8 origin realm. At the same time, we would also be able to lend a hand to the original owner of the Azure Emperor city, preventing him from being killed by others in the Azure Emperor city. Right now, the relationship between our two clans is extremely good. There's a hint of killing intent in the air. Oh, the people in the city seem to be in a hurry, as though they're preparing for war. It's just that we don't know where the enemy is. Yun Nuoxing sighed. The atmosphere was extremely heavy. Where is your clan? Let me guess, it should be that one. Yuan Shi pointed to a location. That location was the most majestic palace in the entire Azure Emperor city. Although it was the most majestic palace in the entire city, the scale of this palace paled in comparison to those that they had seen in the past. Chu Yingzhan smiled as she shook her head. Our clan isn't located in the surface of the Azure Emperor city. It's a world of its own. Yun Nuoxing spoke in a light voice. His gaze roamed around the city before fixing on a certain location. In the center of the Azure Emperor city there was a lofty lake. Over there, an immense amount of spatial energy could be felt. He stretched out his hand and pointed to the lake as he spoke. It should be over there. The gazes of the crowd followed the direction he was pointing at and saw the lake as well. Chu Yingzhan's lips twitched as she glanced at him. You little fellow, there's no mystery in front of you. This tacit agreement caused Yun Nuoxing to chuckle as he scratched his head. It's too obvious, all the spatial energy in the entire Azure Emperor city is concentrated in that location. You guys might not be able to see it, but it's extremely conspicuous in my eyes. It's like a vortex of energy. The crowd exchanged mutual glances as they helplessly shrugged. This fellow's eyes were too sharp, they couldn't be compared to him. Let's go. Chu Yingzhan unhappily rolled her eyes at him. Waving her hands, she led the crowd towards the entrance of the city. Let's go to my clan first. Chapter 961. Comparing the Azure Emperor city to the other major cities, other than the unique construction materials, there wasn't much of a difference. Occasionally, in the smaller cities, there would be special events that even Yun Nuoshing had never seen or heard of before. For example, the Star Master ceremony she had seen before. The atmosphere in the city was somewhat heavy. That gigantic energy barrier didn't seem to be able to give everyone a sense of security. The passers-by on the streets no longer paid any attention to Yun Nuoshing and the others. They only glanced at them for a moment before shifting their gazes away. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable worry as they stared at the barrier, wanting to say something yet sighing. In a large-scale war in the world of cultivators, the mortals who were affected by it were the most helpless. They could only manage their daily necessities and live their lives peacefully. If one day the heavens suddenly collapsed and the earth cracked apart, they wouldn't even be able to react. Not only that, it was a man-made disaster. At the edge of the lake in the Azure Emperor city, there was a group of experts clad in golden and silver armor, wielding sharp weapons in their hands. Their eyes were as sharp as the eyes of eagles as they surveyed the surroundings. Even if a fly were to fly past, it would be scanned tens of times. The security of this place was extremely tight during times of war. Halt! The appearance of Yun Nua Planet's group immediately attracted the attention of the soldiers. A person wearing a special golden armor walked forward and held a spear in front of him. He stared at the crowd and said coldly, "Outsiders are not allowed to enter the curved boundary." "Uncle, it's me, I've returned." Chu Yingzhan walked forward, looking at the golden-armored man as her voice was filled with agitation and anxiousness. "You? Little fairy." That person was also greatly startled. He took off his helmet, revealing the face of a middle-aged man. Upon seeing that it was indeed the eldest princess of the Chu realm who had returned, he couldn't help but laugh. An instant later, he frowned and asked, "What is your father thinking? Now that we are in such a dangerous situation, it's useless to call you back." What if, before he finished speaking, the middle-aged man sighed heavily. If they lost this war, their Chu clan would be in danger. Even though the clan leader of the Chu clan had struggled to grow up, leading the Chu clan to a meteoric rise and was a god in the hearts of the Chu clan, even so, that god didn't have much confidence in this war. He might not be able to survive this crisis. No matter what, it's good that you're back. Let's head back first. A few other people who were also wearing golden armor strode over and took off their helmet. When they saw that the first princess of the Chu family was becoming more and more beautiful and powerful, they felt gratified. Then, they turned around and saw Yun Nuoshing and the others. They frowned and asked, "Little fairy, these people are friends?" "They are all my friends. With them here, this crisis will definitely not be a problem." Chu Yingzhan grinned and then whispered, "Quickly send a message back. There should be a lot of people in the music realm right now. Tell those noisy people who like to find trouble to scram to one side. This great god likes peace and quiet. Don't bother about those who only talk and help. With them around, even if the other side throws out more than 10 emperor gods, it won't be a problem." These words caused the expressions of those few people to be doubtful. They knew that this girl was usually very noisy and mischievous, but she would definitely not act recklessly when it came to important matters. Immediately, they did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly opened a path. After exchanging a few words with Chu Yingzhan, the group finally squeezed through the human wall. A group of beginner-level gods, and how many demigods? The middle-aged man muttered in his heart. He didn't say anything inappropriate. After all, they were friends of the first princess of the music realm. He just asked someone to send the message back to the music realm. Chu Yingzhan waved her hand and led the group into the lake. The wet and cold feeling that they expected didn't appear. Everyone only felt a flash in front of their eyes. Originally, they were still parallel to the surface of the lake, but at this moment they were standing on solid ground. The sky was a boundless azure curtain, with clouds floating in the sky. Gusts of cold wind blew from afar, and the sea of trees in the mountains splashed with layers of emerald-green waves. That lake is the dividing point between the music realm and the outside world. In the past, we would need a token from the Chu clan to enter. However, it seems that we are in a state of emergency now. There should be a large number of powers from the Azure Emperor City in the music realm. After all, the Azure Emperor City seems to be under the control of our clan. The declaration of war over there is a declaration of war against the entire city, and not just against our Chu clan. Hence, I reckon that this time around, no one will be able to escape unscathed. Chu Yingzhen said. The energy density seems to be higher than the outside world. Ming sniffled and said, there's a little. But it's definitely incomparable to the 9 divine halls. Chu Yingzhen laughed. The environment in the 9 divine halls had undergone countless years and tens of epochs of transformation. It had long transformed into a paradise of heavenly passages. Also, the 9 divine halls were all gathered together. The density of heaven and earth energy there was even more exaggerated. It could be said to be a divine realm. After leaving the entrance, they flew towards the depths of the music realm. Not long after, they saw numerous towering mountain peaks rising from the ground. On these mountain peaks there were many gigantic pavilions and palaces. Within the pavilions, powerful auras could be felt. In this place that was near the center of the music realm, the density of energy was even denser, forming a mist of energy. This was a paradise of heavenly passages. The number of people seems to be a little lacking. Yuan Shi surveyed the surroundings. The majority of the music realm was filled with mountains and forests. There was no one living there. Only in the center of the music realm would there be some heavenly pavilions. Most of the people in our family did not come up. Most of the people who came were some of Dad's close brothers and 2 mothers who cheated their daughters. Chu Yingzhen curled her lips and said, Next is the power that Dad has been running all these years. However, he is a hands-off shopkeeper. Everything is handled by uncle and eldest uncle. After casually chatting for a while, everyone continued to look around curiously. Chu Yingzhen led the way in front. She did not head towards the most majestic palace in the center. Instead, she flew to the side. The atmosphere in the music realm was somewhat heavy. Even though no one could be seen, they could still feel the heavy atmosphere. There were also many messy energy detectors that swept across the group of people. When these energy detectors touched Chu Yingzhen, there would be some fluctuations. Fairy Girl is back. She has already advanced to the initial divine level. This speed, tisk tisk. News spread rapidly among the pavilions and palaces. Suddenly, the news of Chu Yingzhen's return spread throughout the music realm. Yun Nuoxing hugged Little Purple Soul tightly, who was struggling to jump down to take a look. She could not help but smile bitterly. Why was this girl suddenly so excited? Did she discover something? Chu Yingzhen led the group of people and landed in the depths of a mountain. There was only a small palace in this place. On the cliff beside the palace, there was a silent waterfall. The river water flowed from the mountain to the distance. On the grassy slope behind the palace, there was a sea of flowers planted. This place looked like a small valley, and there were traces of meticulous decorations everywhere. Chu Yingzhen smiled and said, Phew, we're home, we're home. There's no need to be restrained, I'm the only one who lives here. Normally, no one will come here, and I reckon that even a fool wouldn't be interested in looking at other places. Yun Nuoxing nodded. The environment here was quiet and peaceful. He could feel the heavy atmosphere in the music realm. There were many people gathered in the palaces. He was too lazy to meet them. He was only here to help this crazy girl solve some problems. There was no need for meaningless meetings. As soon as they landed, Little Purple Soul broke free from Yun Nuoxing's arms while he was in a daze. Then, she waved her hands and ran toward the sea of flowers behind the palace. In a flash, she was already there. Go and watch that girl. Don't let her run too far. Yun Nuoshing did not know whether to laugh or cry. He could not watch that girl, so he had to let Little Moon and Little Purple Soul keep an eye on her. The group followed Chu Yingzhan into the small palace. Although it was called a palace, it was just the outer shell of a palace. It was just a slightly larger pavilion. The interior and exterior were two completely different styles. Yuan Shi and Nightmare threw themselves on the sofa in the living room as if they were familiar with each other. They stretched and got up awkwardly under the cold and disdainful gazes of the girls. They straightened their faces and coughed dryly. Chu Yingzhan ran over to find a tea set. She was a little flustered. It was the first time she had invited friends to her house, so she was a little nervous. Yun Nuoshing wanted to help her, but Xian pushed him onto the sofa. She gave him a playful smile and ran to help him. After a while, Yun Nuoshing picked up the teacup on the table, took a sip and let out a sigh of relief. Then, under everyone's horrified gazes, he took out an unknown item that contained an extremely strong fairy aura and threw it into the teapot. The teapot immediately sparkled with a celestial light. Everyone who took a sniff would feel comfortable all over, as if they were about to ascend to heaven. Hey, is it really okay to use a fairy item to make tea? Chu Yingzhan had a stomachache. This was too King extravagant. Oh, the Ling Ling leaf is used to make tea. It can be drunk for a long time. Don't look at me. Drink tea, drink tea. Yun Nuoshing smiled at everyone. The aroma of the tea rose in spirals, accompanied by the qi of immortals, and spread far and wide. Even the three girls who were playing in the sea of flowers for a while smelled the aroma of the tea from afar. They hurriedly ran back, snatched Yun Nuoshing's teacup, took a sip and slowly tasted it. Yun Nuoshing stared blankly at his suddenly empty hands. He sighed softly, took 2 more teacups and poured tea. Everyone was drunk to the point of intoxication, and there was no one else here. Suddenly, strange expressions appeared one after another. Chu Yingzhan's entire body was paralyzed on the sofa. Her eyes were rolled back, and she breathed out more than she breathed in, as if she was about to die. Yun Nuoshing was used to it. He had eaten many fairy items. The Ling Ling leaf could empty one's mind and heart. Under such circumstances, entering a state of enlightenment would definitely bring unexpected benefits. Everyone was in a half-awake state. Little Purple Soul was curled up in his arms, making sleep-talking sounds. Her little mouth was moving. Perhaps she was dreaming of something delicious. After a while, 2 energies suddenly approached from the outside, causing everyone to slowly wake up. They hurriedly tidied up their messy clothes from lying on the ground and sat up straight in all seriousness. They held their teacups under their noses and took a sip from time to time. They were just like old men who were tasting tea, sister. Before anyone arrived, a voice was heard from outside the door. It was a very clear and pleasant voice, followed by a dry howl. Sister Xian, did you know that while you were away, Dad and the others, there were guests here? 2 figures stepped into the room. It was a man and a woman. They were very young and looked about the same age as them. The girl's beautiful face maintained a subtle indifference, while Mei Mao's voice was full of spirit. The young man had a frivolous smile on his face. The moment he saw that there were people in the hall, he immediately changed his tone. His temperament instantly became gentle, just like a gentleman. Oh, relax. They are a bunch of idiot. Don't mind them. What did you say about Dad and the others? Chu Yingzhan waved her hand and pointed at the sofa beside her, gesturing for them to take a seat. The young man in white scratched his head. Under the curious gaze of Yuan Shi and the others, he ran to Chu Yingzhan's side and sat down. Then, he opened his mouth and said, "Dad and Mom." Just as he said that, he jumped up as if he had seen a ghost. The girl who walked to his side was shocked. Following his gaze, she was also stunned. After a while, the 2 of them opened their mouths in shock and cried out, "Brother Yun?" This time, it was Yun Nuoshing's turn to spit out a mouthful of tea. This mouthful of immortal tea made his face turn red. Xian and Ming hurriedly reached out and patted his back. Everyone was stunned when they heard this name. Chu Yingzhan was about to introduce him, but the smile on her face froze. She turned around and quickly pulled the young man down. She hurriedly asked, "You know each other? When did this happen?" Yun Nuoshing coughed for a long time before he raised his head. When he saw the people who came in, he was also stunned. He didn't turn his head just now. His back was facing the door. Only then did he recognize that the two people who had just entered were people he had met not long ago. Gu Chen? Ancient fairy? Yun Nuoshing looked at the young man and girl strangely. After a while, he seemed to understand something. He smiled faintly and said, "They should be called Chu Chen and Chu Xianling." Hearing this, Chu Xianling and her brother both laughed awkwardly. "What's going on? What's going on?" Chu Yingzhan was confused. She looked at Yun Nuoshing and hurriedly asked, "Idiot, when did you know my brother and sister?" "Not long ago." Yun Nuoshing shrugged and told her what happened in the Yin-Yang world. "In the end," he added, "I was wondering why they looked a little familiar. It turns out that they are your brother and sister." Chu Yingzhan had mixed feelings when she heard this. She didn't expect that they were all in the Yin-Yang world at that time, and they even passed by each other. She didn't expect that such a dangerous thing would happen at that time. After a long time, Chu Yingzhan rubbed her black hair, sighed, looked at Yun Nuoshing, and said with a grin, "Well, I'm lucky to have met you this time. These two idiots are not smart enough, but they still go out and cause trouble all day long." Yun Nuoshing looked at her with a faint smile and said, "You're quite capable of causing trouble yourself, aren't you? At least I can solve it myself." Chu Yingzhan lightly snorted, then her eyebrows furrowed as she glared at Chu Chen and Chu Yingzhan. Her voice was slightly cold as she said, "And the two of you, why did you come to such a dangerous place to find the sun flame fruit? It's not like those bastards have been eyeing our family for a long time. When will you guys be smarter?" Chu Xianling and Chu Yingzhan shrunk their necks and lowered their heads, not speaking. When Chu Yingzhan shouted, she even shrank her body and closed her eyes in fright. Yuanshi couldn't bear to see the two trembling, so he quickly persuaded, Okay, just say a few words. It's fine as long as you're fine." Fortunately, Little Star was here this time. Otherwise, something might have happened. Hearing this, Chu Yingzhan finally breathed a sigh of relief. She grabbed the teacup on the table and took a sip of immortal tea. Only then did she take a deep breath. "You haven't said anything yet. Why did you go to look for the yang fruit?" Chu Yingzhan asked. "Auntie, that." Chu Xianling lowered her head and clutched her skirt tightly, looking frightened. Chu Chen quickly coughed dryly and said, "It's an old problem. Sister Xian, you know it too. We had no choice but to go out. What's the use of the two of you going out for something that even my stupid father couldn't handle?" Chu Yingzhan said in annoyance. Then, she suddenly froze and quickly looked at Yun Nuoshing and said, "Idiot! Do me a favor." "Oh," Yun Nuoshing nodded, then stood up and stretched. She shook her head and said concisely, "Let's go." Everyone also stood up. Chu Chen quickly waved his hand and said, "Auntie's condition has stabilized. She's almost recovered." Chu Yingzhan was stunned and looked at him with distrust. "You two solved it just like that?" "Not us," Chu Xianling shook his head and said, "Auntie solved it herself. She's recovered a lot now." Chu Yingzhan made an unclear sound from her throat. She furrowed her willowy eyebrows and thought for a bit. In the end, she still grabbed Yun Nuoshing's arm and walked out. She said, "I'm worried. Idiot, let's go take a look." Hey, don't pull me." "Don't rush." Seeing her pull Yun Nuoshing out in a hurry, everyone looked at each other, shrugged, and quickly followed. Chu Xianling and Chu Chen, who were stunned in place, were also pushed by Yuan Shi. The latter smiled and said, "Just smile. Don't think too much. Just follow." He pulled Yun Nuashing and led a group of people to fly through the music world. They landed in an equally quiet courtyard. Then, he let go of Yun Nuashing's hand. The group of people landed slowly. As soon as they entered the courtyard, a figure rushed out and hugged Chu Yingzhan in her arms. She smiled and said, "Xian'er, you're back. Auntie, I'm all grown up." Chu Yingzhan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was hugged in front of so many people. Her pretty face immediately turned red. When would her auntie realize that she was all grown up? She hoped that she wouldn't be hugged by a bear every time she came back. It was a cold and elegant young woman. She was very young and beautiful. Her temperament was otherworldly. Her fair skin and exquisite figure were wrapped in a white dress. The faint coldness between her eyebrows melted because of Chu Yingzhan's arrival. Her dimples were like flowers and she was like a fairy. "You are Yong Changsho. I'm also your auntie," the woman in white said softly. She reached out her hands and rubbed Yun Nuashing's hair. Then, she raised her head and looked at the crowd. "Are these your friends?" The sudden sound of astonishment stunned Chu Yingzhan. She raised her head and asked in confusion, "Auntie?" The cold and elegant woman gently pushed Chu Yingzhan away and looked at Yun Nuashing in a daze. Yun Nuashing also widened her eyes in astonishment. There couldn't be such a coincidence in this world. "Why are you here?" The cold and elegant woman was very surprised. That day, she saw a boy who looked like a girl under the strange tree. She thought that she would never see him again. Yun Nuashing covered her face. Everyone's expressions suddenly became very strange. Chu Yingzhan was even more horrified. "Auntie, how do you know this fool?" "Fool?" This unique address stunned the woman. She looked at Chu Yingzhan thoughtfully, and then looked at Yun Nuashing, who had a pained expression on her face. She couldn't help but chuckle and said, "He taught me the double-colored fruit that I took back some time ago in the Yin-Yang world. Speaking of which, my current situation is stable because of him." "The Yin-Yang world again?" Everyone gasped. They looked at Chu Yingzhan, and then at Chu Chen and the others, who were dumbfounded. They couldn't help but ask, "Your family almost gathered in the Yin-Yang world. How could you pass by?" Chu Chen and Chu Xianling also didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They were also in the woods that day. In that case they really passed by. They didn't expect that their auntie was there at that time. They almost met. How small was this world? The group of people told the story at once. When the cold and elegant woman heard it, she couldn't help but be surprised. She covered her mouth and smiled. Chapter 962. In the hall, everyone casually found a place to sit down. Some were lying down, some were paralyzed, and some were even lying on the high-backed chairs. Many pairs of eyes were looking at the hall, at Yun Nuashing, who was busy controlling the golden ball of light. From time to time, they would turn their gazes and look at the cold and elegant woman in white, blinking their eyes and yawning. Yun Nuashing controlled the Book of Epoch. Although it was called a book, it was more like an omniscient detection device. It could detect everything from the current time to the composition of an entire world. He could not investigate its origins. He pushed his memories back to the beginning, which was the beginning of Quarter Moon's memories. At that time, the Book of Epochs already existed. He was very familiar with this thing, but he did not know how it came about. After researching it for his entire life, he could only figure out how to split it into two halves. Now, the two halves were combined again. Zero's part had already been retrieved. After a long time, Yun Nuashing put away the Book of Epoch. The information it gave back surged into his mind. He closed his eyes and muttered, "Idiot, how's the situation?" Chu Yingzhan quickly asked. Chu Chen, Chu Xianling, and the cold woman also looked at him attentively. "Oh." Yun Nuashing muttered to himself for a long time before opening his eyes. He looked at the woman in white with a strange gaze. He felt that there were still some fluctuations in her body, but it was much calmer compared to the first time he saw it. He could not help but sigh. I have to say, you are really lucky. This sentence made the woman in white feel awkward. Chu Yingzhan and the other two's expressions changed slightly. This sentence did not sound like a good sign. Idiot. You have a way, right? You must have a way, right? At this moment, Chu Yingzhan was also very nervous. Her hand that grabbed Yun Nuoxing's arm trembled. Her knuckles turned white. Patting Yun Nuoxing's hand to signal her to calm down, Yun Nuoxing sighed and sat down on the sofa. She said, "The 7 elements realm came here, but the energy conversion was not complete, and the body's resistance was too strong. To be honest, this is the first time I've seen something like this. Although that fruit has improved your condition a lot, it can't solve the root of the problem. It can only suppress it. A kind of impure energy has been left in the body for too long. Even if it was originally the energy in your body, it will still be the same. Over time, the original energy will become a smelly stone stuck in the body. It can't be used or expelled. It will do you no good, and it will also cause a certain degree of distortion to your soul." Yun Nuoxing sighed. If it weren't for the many spiritual objects of heaven and earth, there might have been a sign hanging in the morning hall. But even so, it won't last for too long. At most 10 years, and at least 4 or 5 years, it will be. Chu Xianling and Chu Chen's faces turned pale. The white-clothed woman's clenched hands also trembled. She looked at Yun Nuoxing calmly. Chu Yingzhan, on the other hand, was not excited. She was very familiar with Yun Nuoxing. She knew that there must be a follow-up. At this time, there was no need to waste her expression. By the way, this situation is not much different from a mortal terminal illness. Yun Nuoxing helplessly spread her hands and shook her head. The body's energy was mixed with other impure substances and scattered all over the body. This situation was like being poisoned. The poison had spread to the whole body, but it had not acted up yet. This sentence caused the expressions of everyone in the hall to change. Chu Yingzhan could not keep her calm anymore. She quickly asked, "Is there a way?" Yun Nuoxing looked conflicted. She slowly stood up and paced back and forth with her hands behind her back. Her colorful long hair and trench coat swayed behind her, shaking everyone's hearts. It was rare to see something that could make Little Star so conflicted. Even when the pillar of creation was constipated, he did not look troubled. Everyone watched her pacing back and forth. After more than 10 minutes, just when Chu Yingzhan was about to lose her patience, she finally stopped. She crossed her arms and leaned against the air, as if she was leaning against the wall. After pondering for a moment, she stretched out 3 fingers. "There are 3 ways." Yun Nuoxing scratched her head. Her clear voice made everyone heave a sigh of relief. Just now, they thought that there was no way at all. Now that they heard that there were 3 ways, it seemed that the situation was not too bad. The first way is to extract the soul, destroy the body, and twist the soul's form back to its original form to rebuild the body. The second way is to extract all of the soul's power and energy from the flesh and blood, including the soul origin. The distorted old soul origin will naturally be replaced with a new one. The third way is to destroy the soul and the body until the impure and distorted parts of the soul are completely destroyed. After the 3 ways were explained, the hall became dead silent. Xiao Xian and Little Magic hugged each other and trembled in fear. These 3 ways sounded very dangerous. If they were really executed, there was a high chance that they would die. Seeing everyone's stunned expressions, Yun Nuoxing sighed helplessly. The main problem is that there is a huge problem with the distortion of the soul. It is not that easy to reverse the mutation of the soul. Even a God-level expert would have a headache. Furthermore, it is even more difficult to twist the soul back instead of in a worse direction. If you bend a steel needle crooked, it is not that easy to straighten it again. It is the same logic. Idiot. Chu Yingzhan swallowed her saliva. Her pleasant voice trembled slightly. Is there a 4th way? Yun Nuoxing glanced at her. For this crazy girl to be so attentive and concerned, This girl must have a high position in her heart. Yes. To everyone's surprise, Yun Nuoxing gave a firm answer. Everyone was stunned. They had thought that these 3 ways were all there was to it. However, the other ways will only get worse. Do you want to hear them? Yun Nuoxing asked calmly. Gently biting her red lips, Chu Yingzhan glanced at her aunt. When she saw the latter gently nod, she also nodded and said, "In any case, there isn't any good method. Let's hear it and it won't delay things. Moreover, having another choice is also good." Seeing this, Yun Nuoxing scratched his head in distress. He sighed and continued, "The 4th way." As he spoke, he took out a scroll. As if he wasn't very sure himself, he spread it open and took a look. Xian and the others also went over to take a look. However, they could only give up when they realized that it was all ancient characters. This is a godly art scroll. It is a very dangerous godly art. There are a total of 12 levels, which are equivalent to 12 levels of tests. In these 12 levels of tests, you will destroy your past self and be reborn into a brand new self, including your soul. Yun Nuoxing rolled up the scroll and said, "Even I will avoid the dangers involved. It is 1 level more difficult than the 9 tribulations godly art." Chu Yingzhan and the others didn't think much of it. However, Chu Yingzhan and Xian were shocked. Even Little Star, who was addicted to risking his life, said that he didn't dare to try it. What kind of dangerous godly art was this? He was risking his life, wasn't he? The 5th way, there's a 5th way? Everyone's eyes widened. Was there an end to this? Yun Nuoxing laughed dryly and nodded. He said, "I will give you a token. Go to the underworld. We will meet again in 10,000 years. Everyone. Reincarnation? Is it reincarnation, brother? Ming reacted. Yun Nuoxing nodded and took out a token. It was black and the size of a palm. In the middle of the token, there was a golden word Lun written in a flamboyant style. However, everyone only saw it for a moment before putting it away. The token of reincarnation. It was originally used by those who had regrets or flaws in their path of cultivation. They would enter the cycle of reincarnation and return to the realm of the gods after 10,000 years. They would be reborn with the memories of their previous life. Well, it's 10,000 years, but it's actually 10,000 years. Who knows, they might be resurrected in the next second. Yun Nuoxing raised his head and sighed. It was originally reserved for them. Unfortunately, they didn't use it. They will never have the chance to use it. Xian and the others fell silent. They all knew who he was referring to. Idiot, is there no safer way? Chu Yingzhan looked conflicted. These methods sounded more and more dangerous. She was afraid that her aunt wouldn't be able to take it. Yun Nuoxing sighed deeply. Your aunt has already reached the threshold of the God-Emperor realm. If she was only a low-level god, it would be over by now. If she was a mid-level god, I could still spend some time to deal with her. However, she's a high-level god, and a mid-level god-emperor at that. Look at this. Don't you know that many old problems only appear when one reaches the God-Emperor realm? The white-robed woman looked away awkwardly. She patted Chu Yingzhan's head and said, "Xianer, it's okay. If I can't beat her, I'll give it a try. There won't be any worse. At worst, I'll just die." Chu Yingzhan's pretty face was full of bitterness. She pursed her lips and wanted to say something. However, from the corner of her eye, she saw Yun Nuoxing's very subtle smile. It was a little naughty. Chu Yingzhan narrowed her eyes when she saw that subtle smile. The smile only lasted for a moment. No one noticed it, but she saw it. She immediately rushed in front of Yun Nuoxing. She pressed her hands on his shoulders and shook him with all her might. "Idiot! Are you playing with me again? Do you like to play with me that much?" Yun Nuoxing was stunned. Didn't he just laugh secretly? Before he was shaken to death, he quickly reached out and pressed down on this crazy girl. He shook his dizzy head and rolled his eyes. "I'm not playing with you. These 5 methods are all feasible." Just as he said those words, he was unable to continue. He saw Chu Yingzhan's slightly reddened eyes and was startled for a moment. He also felt a great headache coming on. Why did this girl suddenly start crying for him? Although she hadn't cried out yet, from the looks of it, she was almost ready to cry. Sigh. Don't look at me like that. You know that I'm not a selfless person. Sometimes, when I help too much, I feel like I'm losing out. Moreover, this is a very troublesome method. It's troublesome for me in various ways. Although he really wanted to say this, in fact, these words were about to come out of his mouth. However, when he saw Mei Mao's misty eyes and her aggrieved look, he clenched his teeth tightly and didn't make a sound. Even his cheeks were trembling a few times. Sigh. After a long while, Yun Nuoxing let out a heavy sigh. He scratched his head in distress. Seriously? Fine, I'm scared of you. I'll help, okay? Really? When? Now? Chu Yingzhan's pretty face instantly had an incomparably bright smile. Mei Mao's eyes sparkled. She no longer looked like a flood that was about to erupt. Yun Nuoxing's eyes widened at the speed of her change of expression. He glared at her. You. Okay, I owe you a favor, okay? Chu Yingzhan patted his shoulder casually and said, You're a man. Don't be so petty. Moreover, you're Tian, right? Yun Nuoxing was so angry that he laughed. Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This guy was deceived by that crazy girl again. If this continued, he would probably be driven crazy. Yun Nuoxing gritted his teeth. To think that he was soft-hearted. In the end, this girl, when can you help? Chu Yingzhan looked at him with a smile. She blinked her right eye and acted cute. Wait, there's no hurry now. Yun Nuoxing turned around angrily. Chu Xianling, Chu Chen, and the girl in white didn't get involved in the conversation. They only reacted after the conversation was over. They looked at Chu Yingzhan strangely. It seemed that this girl trusted this guy who looked like a girl a lot. However, he did help them a lot. It was just that they didn't know where Chu Yingzhan's trust came from. Sister Ling, Sister Xian can't be in love, right? Chu Chen suddenly thought of this and hurriedly transmitted his voice. Chu Xianling's cheeks trembled. Mei Mao sized up Yun Nuoxing slightly. She glanced at her brother and said, It doesn't seem like it. Who knows what sister is thinking? However, if it's brother Yun, it doesn't seem bad. Chu Chen chuckled. He admitted this. Yun Nuoxing didn't know what they were thinking. She was busy looking for something in the pendant. After a while, she found it. She took out an emerald bracelet and used the power of the divine body to carve something on the bracelet. After she was done, she threw it to the girl in white and said, Wear it on your wrist. It can temporarily suppress your unstable energy. As for what I said, do it later. Now isn't a good time to solve this problem. Just this little thing? The girl in white muttered softly. In the end, she saw Yun Nuoxing's slightly tired and slightly indifferent gaze. She hurriedly put the bracelet on her wrist. She was suspicious because this problem had been with her for many years. If it could be suppressed so easily, she wouldn't have, Before she could finish her thought, she saw the bracelet on her wrist. Then, a burst of colorful light spread out from the bracelet and covered her body. The unstable energy in her body quickly calmed down under the comfort of the colorful light. Finally, her fluctuating aura gradually stabilized. The fluctuations became smaller and smaller. In just a few seconds, this great god expert who couldn't control her own energy returned to her normal great god state. It's really calmed down. After her energy returned to normal, the girl in white's pretty face was full of astonishment. She said something very surprising. After a while, she saw that Yun Nuoxing was still staring at her. She even puffed up her cheeks like a child. She couldn't help but smile and show a grateful expression. She bowed slightly to him and said, Thank you so much for this time. Is it okay if I call you Little Yun? Yun Nuoxing shuddered and hurriedly waved her hand and said, As you wish. So, isn't it time to talk about something serious? That guy who was called back by lifesteal. As he said that, he looked at Chu Yingzhan. This girl was in a daze at this moment. When she saw him looking at her, she was also stunned. Only then did she remember the reason why she was called back. She had already forgotten about it. That's right. Battle. Chu Yingzhan jumped up and said, "You suddenly sent me a message asking me to come back quickly. You said that there's going to be a battle. What's going on? Are those bastards from the Ling Yun battle court causing trouble?" "You just remembered?" The girl in white laughed bitterly. She reached out to stroke the hair in front of her forehead and said, "The situation is similar to what you know. Didn't you say that there weren't many people in the Kuan-Yuan region who dared to provoke your family? Why did someone come knocking on your door in the blink of an eye?" Yun Nuoxing shot a glance at Chu Yingzhan and asked, "After wandering around the deity world for so many years, it's inevitable that you will encounter some unavoidable things. Big Brother has been in the deity world for several 100,000 years and has quickly advanced from a heavenly deity to a late-stage god-emperor. He has offended many people in this process." The girl in white shook her head helplessly. "It's not bad to become a god-emperor in several 100,000 years. He should have broken through the seals several times." Yun Nuoxing nodded. This wasn't a particularly difficult matter. There were many experts who became god-emperors within 1,000,000 years. That long period of time was enough for them to find many ways to break through the seals on their bodies and continue cultivating. However, the path after that was difficult. Even if Chu Yingzhan's father had the capability to become a late-stage god-emperor before 1,000,000 years old, he might not be able to enter the late-stage god realm in the following 100 million years, one epoch or even 3 epochs. This was a gap of an entire world. It was hard to cross. Amen? I suddenly remembered. Yun Nuoxing's mind suddenly wandered as he thought of something. He looked at Chu Yingzhan and furrowed his brows, saying, "Your father is already several 100,000 years old, and you still haven't broken through 100? Why are your sister and brother still so young?" Chu Yingzhan was startled. After a moment she jumped up and said, "I really haven't broken through 100 years old. I came to the deity world after my stupid father. More than 10 years later, I came here because of the energy conversion you just mentioned. Not long after, I passed out. My stupid father got a lot of extreme grade Xian crystals by chance, so he sealed me and kept me here until now. I only came out when I recovered." Yun Nuoxing had a strange look on her face. However, this was quite normal. When people from the lower realm came to the upper realm, the energy in their bodies would automatically be assimilated by the pure energy of heaven and earth. At the same time, the energy would be injected with the energy of the element. The failure rate of this process was quite high. After all, no one wanted to see the energy that they had painstakingly cultivated for many years being replaced inexplicably. What's more, a new energy was injected into it. Subconsciously they would resist. Once they resisted, a big problem would occur. The white-robed woman and Chu Yingzhan were already considered lucky. If the situation was worse, they would die on the spot. The energy of the superior grade Xian crystal could seal a complete person for tens of millions of years. Lan Xian had been sealed in a Xian crystal for almost 100 eras. However, she only had her soul. She had to consume a lot of energy to preserve her body. After a moment, he looked at Chu Xianling and Chu Yingzhan again. The two of them waved their hands and said with a wry smile, "We were born in the divine world more than 30 years ago." Everyone let out a long "oh." Yun Nuoxing shrugged. He was just curious and interrupted. "Now," he said, "okay, now that you have finished your curiosity, let's get down to business." Chapter 963. Then, let's get down to business. Yun Nuoxing pushed his long hair behind his head and put on an unfathomable expression. He smiled faintly and his lips curled up slightly. His smile was evil and charming. "Although I don't know what's going on, I really want to kick you when I see you like this." Chu Yingzhan widened her eyes and sighed unhappily. She looked at the woman in white and said, "Auntie, why don't you tell us? I've been away from the music world for a while, so I don't know as much as you do." The woman in white nodded and sorted out her thoughts. Everyone sat down quietly and wiped their ears. Then, the woman in white began to speak softly. The eastern part of the Kuan-Yuan region, specifically, is the northeast region. The north borders the North Ice Realm, and the south extends all the way to the middle of the Kuan-Yuan region. A quarter of the vast land of the Kuan-Yuan region is also called the Kuan-Yun land by the people of Kuan-Yuan region. The other 3 parts of the Kuan-Yuan region also have this name. The Kuan-Yun land is divided into 36 regions, which are called 36 prefectures. Each prefecture contains millions of cities of various sizes, countless small gathering places, and large areas of uninhabited wilderness and forests. As soon as the woman finished speaking, Yun Nuoshing was stunned. "Huh? You're continuing to divide the regions again? You really have nothing better to do." Everyone was stunned. He continued, "Well, it's normal. The realm of the gods is too vast. If you don't divide the regions in detail, you won't even know where you are when you go to other large regions. In the end, you can only report the Kuan-Yuan region and add the location at most. Then, you can only point at the map and say that it's roughly this place. In the end, you'll end up in all directions." The woman in white, Chu Xianling, and Chu Chen didn't feel anything when they heard this. However, Xian and Chu Yingzhan, who were in the know, finally understood. It seemed that the regions weren't divided so clearly in the remote antiquity age. "Well, little star, you just don't know. You don't pay much attention to this. Anyway, you flew here and there and crossed dozens of regions, but you still don't know. There are also detailed divisions in other large regions," Yuan Shi said. Cough, cough. Seeing that the topic was about to deviate, the woman in white hurriedly coughed dryly. Yun Nuoshing and Yuan Shi sat upright and still, revealing an embarrassed smile. Rolling her eyes at the two of them, she continued, "The Azure Emperor City is located in the 10th prefecture of the Earthcloud continent. In this prefecture, there are a few major powers that can be considered first-rate in the myriad gods world. One of them is none other than the Chu boundary of our Azure Emperor City. As for the remaining ones, they are all from the Lingyun Battle Court. They are considered to be the strongest powers in this prefecture." "How does it compare to the 9 Gods' Shrine?" Nightmare suddenly asked with a playful smile. The woman in white was taken aback. When the 9 Gods' Shrine was mentioned, a hint of fear and respect could be seen in her eyes. After thinking for a while, she shook her head and said, "I'm not too sure about the details of the 9 Gods' Shrine. I only know that they are very strong. Legend has it that as long as a shrine possesses all of its strength, it would be enough to overthrow an entire origin region. Only the 8 ancient great clans and the 12 star palaces would be able to barely resist it. Fortunately, the 9 Gods' Shrine has no intention of occupying a piece of land. If the 9 Gods' Shrine were to announce that they wanted a piece of land, many people would feel uneasy." Oh, everyone let out a long oh. After that, they all said in unison in their hearts, "So the 9 Gods' Shrine is actually like this in the eyes of others." "Don't interrupt." Yun Nuoshing glared at everyone. Looking at the woman in white, she laughed dryly and said, This, elder sister, please continue." That sweet form of address made the woman in white smile gently. When the cold beauty smiled, it was as if a warm sun had descended upon this place. It was incomparably bright. Chu Yingzhan rolled her eyes. Was this guy used to calling her elder sister or something? He was an old man who had lived for 70 years. How could he call someone elder sister? "A few years ago, when my brother was roaming the gods' realm, he had a conflict with a holy son of the Lingyun Battle Court. That holy son died in my brother's hands, and that was how the grudge was formed. Then, because of the Lingyun Battle Court, a few of the forces under it also had conflicts with my brother. Until now, ever since the Chu Jie was established, It has been constantly at war with the Lingyun battle court. We also have forces that are on good terms with us, but they are too far away. Some of them are very far away from the 10th state. As for the neighboring 3 states, 4 states, 9 states, 11 states, and so on, there are no people that we are familiar with. But the Lingyun battle court, the white-robed woman wanted to continue speaking, but Yun Nuoshing suddenly extended her hand to stop her. There's no need to talk about these general matters. I want to know the specific combat strength of those participating in the battle. You don't have to mention those below the high-level gods. The white-robed woman was stunned. She tilted her head. Mei Mao looked at Chu Yingzhan strangely. The latter could only stick out her tongue, indicating for her to continue speaking. Only then did she nod. Over at the Lingyun battle court, there are about 8 to 9 god emperors. 2 of them are late-stage god emperors, and 1 of them might be a late-stage or mid-stage god emperor. It has been a long time since they appeared, so I'm not sure. As for the remaining ones, there are about 20 underworld emperors and about 40 to 50 underworld kings. Does this include the forces under them? Yun Nuoshing asked again. The white-robed woman nodded. She pondered for a moment before continuing. As for the Chu world, or the Azure Emperor City, there are only 5 god emperors including me. As for those at the level of the underworld emperors and underworld kings, they are lacking in combat strength, 8 to 9, huh? If we count more seriously, there are 15 god emperors, all of whom are late-stage god emperors. There are even god emperors who have stepped into the 1,000-layered 100 revolutions realm. Yun Nuoshing murmured. The words she said caused everyone to feel fear. 8 and 15? Furthermore, they were all late-stage god emperors. Wasn't this a little too serious? What about divine weapons? Is there anyone with a special physique? Is there any specific information on the strengths of the various god emperors? Also, are there any special high-level gods? For example, those who can fight across 2 to 3 major realms? Yun Nuoshing raised her head and looked at the white-robed woman. The white-robed woman started as an awkward expression appeared on her face. She shook her head lightly. I'm not too sure about all these. Maybe I have to ask my elder brother to know. Chu Yingzhan stared at Yun Nuoshing in astonishment. She had never seen such a serious expression on his face before. From what she knew, this violent fellow was someone who could push through all obstacles. She didn't expect that he would also have a time when he was thinking about strategy. Strategy? When Chu Yingzhan couldn't help but blurt it out, Yun Nuoshing started. He cast a strange glance at her before shaking his head. What strategy? I'm calculating the degree of resistance of my opponent. Those with thicker skin would have to use more strength. I'm calculating what methods to use. Everyone, Chu Yingzhan almost slid under the table. Her face twitched as she got up from the sofa. She looked at Yun Nuoshing speechlessly and said, I knew it. I couldn't trust you, no, but calculating the combat power of the enemy and then choosing the way to fight and the means to fight can also be considered a type of strategy. Chu Chen gritted his teeth as he tried to smooth things over for Yun Nuoshing. Estimating the strength of the enemy and making preparations for a contingency plan. It's very rigorous, Chu Xianling quickly added. Chu Yingzhan widened her eyes and looked at Chu Xianling and Chu Yingzhan with a strange expression. Yun Nuoshing thought for a while and suddenly stood up. He looked at her and said, Is your father free now? Let's talk to him. I need more accurate information. No matter what, the deciding factor of this battle was still the battle between the Emperor Gods. Although he said that he could kill the Emperor Gods, he had to be careful when facing a group of Emperor Gods. After all, he had to use his full strength to deal with such experts. It would be good if he could deal 1 or 2 attacks. He had to think about what to do if the enemy still had the ability to fight after 1 or 2 attacks. Of course, it would be best if he could deal with them in one go. Dummy, wait. Are you planning to deal with them yourself? Chu Yingzhan quickly asked in his soul. Yes. Sister Shui and the others went to the other realms connected to the Myriad Realm book 2 or 3 days ago. Although I can still call for many experts from the 9 deity temple, it's better not to trouble them. They have their own things to do, Yun Nuoshing nodded in response. Oh, by the way, I haven't asked when the battle will start. Just as he was about to walk out, Yun Nuoshing stopped and asked. The white-robed woman said, "There are still 3 days. It has been 4 days since the battle notice was sent. Originally, I didn't plan to call Xian back. But yesterday, a few young disciples from the Chu domain went out with the young people from the other powers in the Azure Emperor City, and were all killed outside the Azure Emperor City. Only then did Big Brother feel the danger and hurriedly called Xian back. Although we have already been ambushed a few times in the Yin-Yang world." Chu Qin shrugged and sighed. Big Brother and the others are still discussing with the other powers in the Azure Emperor City. It's not good for us to go over now. Let's wait first, the white-robed woman said. Compared to Yun Nuoshing, he didn't have any objections. There were still 3 days. He only wanted to ask about some small matters. As long as they didn't tell him at the last moment that there was a god on the other side, everything was easy to handle. Little Purple Soul saw that his brother was still talking to others. He swung his legs in boredom. After a while, he finally couldn't sit still and slipped out. Little Moon and Ewer saw this and hurriedly followed, running around the courtyard and the valley. Because there was nothing special to mention, after a simple conversation, Yun Nuoshing sat down to rest and raised his head in a daze. Xian and Ming also imitated him and were in a daze. Chu Yingzhan was pulled to the side by the white-robed woman. The others also walked around the room. "Xian, tell me honestly, is little Yun the son-in-law you brought back for your father?" the white-robed woman whispered. As soon as these words came out, Chu Yingzhan instantly exploded. Her beautiful face flushed red as she jumped up and down on the spot. "Auntie? What nonsense are you talking about? How could I fall into the hands of that perverted Siskon, shameless idiot harem boy?" Such a huge commotion caused the white-robed woman to laugh. She knew her niece's personality very well. If it really wasn't her niece, why would she have such a big reaction? This girl was so shy that she wanted to die. In the past, when this topic was brought up, she would only say in disdain that this fairy didn't like anyone. But now the white-robed woman, Mei Mao, turned around and suddenly laughed. She kept sizing up Chu Yingzhan, causing the latter's hair to stand on end. She quickly hugged her arms and shook her head with all her might. "I'll definitely, even if I'm single for the rest of my life, I'll definitely not fall into the hands of that idiot harem boy." Hearing this, the white-robed woman couldn't help but laugh. "This is the first time I've heard you call a boy an idiot." She couldn't help but secretly laugh. Such an intimate nickname. Without waiting for Chu Yingzhan to explode and retort, the white-robed woman waved at Chu Xianling. The latter, who was in a daze, only reacted after a while. She bounced in front of her. "Auntie, you're looking for me? I see that you're quite interested in little Yun." The white-robed woman, Mei Mao, had a sly glint in her eyes as she stared at Chu Xianling. Seeing her eyes move slightly, she couldn't help but laugh. "What, do you two like each other?" Before Chu Xianling could answer, Chu Yingzhan pulled her into her arms with all her might. Her deep voice was somewhat cold. "Little girl, listen to me. Even if you find a repulsive man, you definitely can't find that idiot. Do you hear me?" After being yelled at by her sister for no reason, Chu Xianling shrunk her neck and looked at her suspiciously. She felt that it was strange and couldn't help but mutter, "Are you my biological sister? How can an elder sister ask her younger sister to find a, besides, are you referring to Brother Yun with that string of adjectives?" At this point, Chu Xianling suddenly saw the white-robed woman winking at her with all her might. She was stunned and subconsciously looked at her sister, who was entangled with her. For a moment, she didn't understand the former's meaning and only continued, "I think Brother Yun is quite good. He's handsome, no, I should say beautiful. He doesn't speak any flowery words, Unlike other men who look at women with shifty eyes as if they haven't seen a woman for tens of millions of years. Furthermore, he's strong. Chu Xianling's Mei Mao sparkled and a strange light flashed across her eyes. She suddenly laughed and broke free from Chu Yingzhan's embrace. She ran to the white-robed woman's side and pulled her arm, shaking it. "Aunt, what do you think of Yun? I'll take care of father myself. Can you help me observe him? I'm a little embarrassed." The white-robed woman smiled and agreed repeatedly. As for Chu Yingzhan, her entire body turned gray as if she had been petrified. Her eyes were dull and her mouth was wide open, but she couldn't squeeze out a single syllable. It wasn't until the white-robed woman walked lightly towards Yun Nuoxing that Chu Yingzhan let out a strange cry and came back to her senses. "Aunt, wait a moment!" Pulling the white-robed woman back, Chu Yingzhan pulled Chu Xianling to the side and slapped her against the wall. She glared at her. "You silly girl, listen carefully. That bastard has a daughter? No. There are many people who like him. You can't compete with those people around him. Furthermore, he is—" Chu Yingzhan shuddered and quickly shut her mouth. She looked like she was in a difficult position, which made the white-robed woman a little interested. This girl didn't mention the child's identity or even his name. She only said that his surname was Yun, and the child didn't seem to want to say his name either. It seemed that he had something he couldn't say. But Chu Xianling raised her eyebrows slightly. Chu Yingzhan gritted her teeth and took a deep breath to calm herself down. She said lightly, "It's a piece of 10,000-year-old wood." "Oh, then it's difficult." The white-robed woman covered her mouth and smiled. It was unknown what she meant by difficult. Chu Xianling was also surprised. She subtly glanced at Yun Nuoxing, who wasn't far away, and then looked at Xian and Ming, who were beside him. She felt a little helpless. There were indeed many girls around this guy, and each of them had their own temperament. There was almost no repetition. Even the white-robed woman felt that this was very impressive in all aspects. "That's what it is." Chu Yingzhan crossed her arms and looked up at her sister. She said, "Stupid sister, give up. That bastard is a heartless person." Chu Xianling shrunk her neck and lowered her head. Chu Yingzhan, "Ah?" I said, "Sister is an idiot." Chu Xianling turned her head, and her face returned to a slightly indifferent look. Mei Mao still glanced at Yun Nuoxing from time to time. They didn't have to wait very long. When Yun Nuoxing and the others were all sleeping soundly, the hall was covered with corpses, and the sky was dark. A figure quietly appeared at the door. She couldn't help but be stunned when she saw a group of people sleeping miserably on the table, sofa, and even the sofa and the ceiling. "Wow, why are there so many corpses in this place?" That person took a step back in shock. She was even more surprised when she saw Chu Yingzhan and her sister leaning against each other on the sofa, and the woman in white being used as a pillow by the two sisters. Then, she saw Yun Nuoxing as a pillow for 4 people, with a white fat ball hanging on her head and a fox wrapped around her chest. She was so shocked that her mouth fell open. Was this a moving fortress? Xian is back. This group of people, are they Xian friends? They're very strange. She could only think of the word strange, after thinking for a while. The person who appeared was a man wearing casual home clothes. His face was very delicate and handsome, and there was a hint of laziness on his face. His facial features were somewhat similar to the woman in white, and he had shoulder-length black hair with faint curls. He had the temperament of a big brother next door. The man tiptoed behind the woman in white, reached out his hand and patted her head gently. Then, he ruffled her hair and said softly, "Chongping, wake up." However, this soft call caused everyone in the room to suddenly open their eyes. Light shot out from over 10 pairs of eyes, causing the space to tremble. The devil nightmare that was hanging on the ceiling also fell to the ground with a bang. That muffled sound caused everyone to become a little more awake. Yun Nuoxing also woke up. She lowered her head, and little magic rolled down with her head. Just as she was about to hit the ground, He reached out with both hands and clamped her into the shape of a gourd. Little Magic also cried out in shock. This time, everyone was completely awake. Everyone's awake. The man scratched his head blankly. He lowered his head to look at the sleepy Chu Yingzhan and couldn't help but sigh. He felt a little disappointed. He originally wanted to give this girl a hug that he hadn't seen in a long time, but in the end there were so many people here that it wasn't appropriate for him to reach out. Elder brother. The white-robed woman, Chu Zhongping, turned her head. She was slightly startled when she saw the newcomers. An instant later, she laughed lightly. After getting familiar with everyone here, the coldness on her face lessened by quite a bit. She stretched her hand out to the crowd and said, "They are all Xian Er's friends. Have you guys finished your discussion? Oh, friends of Xian Er, welcome to the music realm to play. Just be natural, please forgive us for the lack of hospitality. As you can see, we're slightly busy now." The man smiled gently at Yun Nuoxing and the others, nodding his head. After which, he sighed and said to Chu Zhongping, "What else can we do? We can only fight. If I was alone in the past, I might be able to settle this debt in the future. But now, I can't run away. No matter what, I have to protect the Azure Emperor City, protect the music realm." "Stupid father, where are mother and the others?" Chu Yingzhan stretched her hand out and patted the stomach of the man. It was a greeting to them that she hadn't returned home for a long time. Now, she didn't have the time to say anything special to them. Shuang and the others are still in closed-door seclusion. It's impossible for them to come out in a short period of time. But even if they did, there would only be 2 more initial-stage God Emperors. It wouldn't have a huge impact on the battle situation. The man sighed, his brows furrowed with worry and fatigue. Chu Xianling and the other 2 squeezed out a seat and pulled him to sit down. They then passed him a cup of immortal tea. This tea caused everyone in the room to fall asleep. It should be able to help him relax a little. The man smiled and stretched out his hand to ruffle Chu Xianling's hair. He took the cup and drank it in a single gulp. The energy of the immortal tea was released in an instant, causing him to feel extremely comfortable. His entire body trembled as he muttered, "This is an item from the fairy realm?" During these years of roaming the myriad deities' realm, he had seen some items from the fairy realm. Such a miraculous heavenly treasure had a unique aura, it was impossible for him to be mistaken. Now that he regained his senses, he discovered that the entire room was filled with this fragrance. It was just that he was too preoccupied with his thoughts earlier and didn't pay much attention to it. Only after drinking the immortal tea did he realize what it was. "Ah, stupid father, you don't have to worry." Chu Yingzhan grinned. She stretched out her hand and patted his shoulder. "This time, I've returned with a huge amount of help." This man who had the aura of an elder brother next door tilted his head in astonishment. He stared at Yun Nuoxing and the others. Was this devilish brat talking about them? Chapter 964. In the Azure Emperor City, there were many people who had been moving about in the shadows. At this moment, they were stealthily entering the city. The streets and alleys were filled with their silhouettes, silently exchanging information with each other. A person dressed in ordinary coarse hemp robes silently appeared at the rooftop of a pavilion, hiding in the shadows. His eyes flashed with a bright light as he stared at the lake in the middle of the Azure Emperor City. After a long period of time, another pair of eyes appeared from the shadows, also staring at the lake in the Chu realm. That place was still heavily guarded, and it had already been a few days, with no signs of laxity. Situation: the Chu realm has already been sealed for 4 days. During this period, other than people from the other major powers of the Azure Emperor City, there was also a group of initial stage deities that entered. There were no traces of them in the Azure Emperor City. For safety's sake, we also searched for the more famous powers in the 10th prefecture. However, among those powers that had the qualifications to enter the Chu realm, there were no traces of them. From the shadows, two low voices drifted over. Even the sunlight had no way to penetrate this strange darkness. Initial stage deities, there's no need to worry. Other than the Chu realm, there are no other powers in the Azure Emperor City that are worth guarding against. There's only 5 to 6 God Emperors, and the number of experts at the other cultivation levels is also lesser than us. It's just that the formation left behind by the demigod sovereign back then is somewhat troublesome. The Azure Emperor Manor's defenses are lax. In the shadows, 2 fluctuations of energy fluctuated rapidly. A few minutes later, everything returned to normal. Silently, another person appeared on the streets below. He glanced to his left and right before leisurely walking towards the city gate. His footsteps didn't even cause the slightest bit of sound. It wasn't intentional, it was more like it had already become a habit. The Azure Emperor City was in a state of combat readiness. The security was extremely tight. Every person who wanted to pass through the city gates would be constantly scanned by over 10 guards. That man dressed in coarse hemp robes curled his lips as he was inspected thoroughly. After a long period of time, he was finally allowed to pass. After that, he followed the main road and walked towards the north slowly. After walking for a full 2 hours, he climbed over a small mountain before speeding off into the distance. After passing through several mountain ranges, he walked for tens of thousands of miles before a vast plain appeared. A gigantic energy barrier descended from the skies, enveloping this area with a radius of 100 miles. Within the barrier, rows of neatly arranged military camps could be seen. Rows of tents were so densely packed that one couldn't even see the end of them. Some of them seemed extremely unique. This was a gigantic military camp. Soldiers clad in silver armor were stationed here. The tents of ordinary soldiers were extremely quiet, exuding an austere aura. There were also some tents with strange insignia that radiated powerful energy fluctuations. These were the energy fluctuations of mid-tier or even high-tier deities. The soldiers didn't dare to go near them. There were also many tents at the borders of the military camp. However, the people here were all dressed in the same uniform and their auras varied from strong to weak. At this moment, they were still casually conversing with one another. Their gazes were filled with reverence when they glanced at the tents that radiated powerful energy fluctuations. They were all disciples of the major powers. Although they were strong, they didn't reek of blood when compared to the ordinary soldiers. They had never experienced life and death battles on the battlefield before. Even so, they were still a force to be reckoned with. That figure dressed in coarse hemp robes rapidly entered the energy barrier, rushing to the largest tent as he spoke to the guards at the entrance. 2 of the guards hurriedly entered the tent to report his arrival. An instant later, they came out and welcomed the figure into the tent. Within the tent, there were over 10 people. They had no aura fluctuations at all, but this didn't mean that they were ordinary people. It was just that their strength had already reached an extremely terrifying degree, causing others to be unable to sense them. Battle Spirit King, your subordinate has returned. That young man entered the tent and knelt down on one knee. He respectfully clasped his hands towards the handsome young man seated in the main seat. The Battle Spirit King casually nodded his head and waved his hands lightly. That young man nodded as well. His tone was calm as he swiftly told the Battle Spirit King all the information he obtained in the Azure Emperor City. I got it. You can leave now. The Battle Spirit King nodded. With a wave of his hand, the figure dressed in coarse hemp robes respectfully clasped his hands and left the tent. In the entire Azure Emperor City, there are only 6 to 7 heavenly emperors. There's nothing to be afraid of. Why don't we attack first and crush them all in one fell swoop? A skinny figure dressed in armor stood up and spoke in a stern voice. The Battle Spirit King glanced at him and didn't reply immediately. He lightly rubbed his hands together. Be it the Chu world or the Azure Emperor City, he wasn't afraid of them. The Soaring Cloud Battle Court had been established in the Kuan Yuan region for many years. Countless new and old powers had replaced them, but their soaring cloud battle court had never fallen. According to his intelligence, the Chu world didn't have any relations with the other prefectures. As a new power that was established less than 1,000,000 years ago, the Chu world was relatively famous in the 10th prefecture, especially that Chu Shen. His original name was Chu Yeong. In just a few 100,000 years, he went against the current from a heavenly deity to a late-stage heavenly emperor. During these years, the Battle Spirit King had heard many things about him. At the start, the soaring cloud battle court only had some small conflicts with Chu Shen. Who would have thought that the conflict would escalate to the point where they had no choice but to face off against each other? The speed of Chu Shen's growth was too fast, causing the Battle Spirit King to feel apprehensive in his heart. Why don't they seize the opportunity now before the Chu world stabilized and take over the Azure Emperor city in one fell swoop? The former number 1 genius of the immortal origin world, who would have thought that he would grow to this extent in just a few 100,000 years? The Battle Spirit King laughed inexplicably, causing everyone to turn silent. In the northeast region of the Kuan origin region, all the young geniuses would enter a special place called the Immortal Origin World to cultivate. That Chu Shen was the number 1 genius of that generation, regardless of talent or strength. At their level, even though the Immortal Origin ranking of the Immortal Origin World wasn't that important to them, they wouldn't blindly underestimate their enemy. Any action of underestimating their enemy was equivalent to courting death. The number 1 genius of the Immortal Origin ranking of the Immortal Origin World had grown to this extent in just a few 100,000 years. Naturally, it wasn't because of luck or coincidence. Does the Battle Spirit King have some misgivings about Chu Yeong? Someone asked. He's a young man that can't be underestimated. The Battle Spirit King smiled faintly. It would be a lie if he said that he wasn't surprised. He reached the same height as us in just a few 100,000 years. Buddy, we're already close to 100 million years old. Ah yes, 100 million. But because of the seal, we've been waiting at this stage. The seal-breaking effect of the fairy's item isn't that obvious. The person who spoke just now sighed and nodded. That brat is indeed a character. His fighting strength is much stronger than his cultivation realm. Maybe he can reach that level. The Battle Spirit King smiled faintly. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect him to give such a high evaluation. The Battle Spirit King smiled for a while, then his expression suddenly became serious. His handsome face was covered with coldness. Because of this, we can't let an enemy that has reached that level continue to grow. Get ready. There are still 3 days. When the time comes, we'll attack with all our might. Don't underestimate the enemy. The 30,000 array masters are ready. There's no problem in combining the arrays. With an early-stage God-Emperor controlling them, nothing major will happen. Someone laughed. The Battle Spirit King was silent for a while. He frowned slightly as he felt uneasy. His intuition told him that he should retreat and act as if nothing had happened. It was a very sudden feeling that he couldn't shake off. This sudden intuition made him laugh at himself. Am I really getting old? I'm scared before it even starts? The difference in strength between both parties was obvious. The intelligence wasn't wrong. Chu Jie should only have the fighting strength that they understood. If that was the case, they would definitely win this battle. Wow? Are you joking? When Chu Shen and Chu Yeong heard Yun Nuoshing and the others say that they wanted to help on the battlefield, they instinctively thought that they were going to join the battle between demigods and early-stage god. Seeing their determined gazes and Chu Yingzhan's words, they agreed. However, Chu Yeong didn't expect that Yun Nuoshing and the others weren't referring to the battle between early-stage gods, but the battle between god-emperors. I don't have time to joke around. Yun Nuoshing spread her hands and sighed. To be exact, I'm going alone. Well, they'll be supporting me from behind. Xian, Chu Yingzhan and the others nodded at the same time. After all, among them, only Yun Nuoxing could use moves that could cause great damage to God Emperors. Although she would be exhausted after every battle, it was their turn to fight. Just like a support group, they would also provide their own strength when necessary. Even if they could only provide a little help, it would be fine. Seeing that the crowd did not seem to be joking, Chu Yeong pinched his cheeks in astonishment. When he realized that the pain was not a dream, he looked at the woman in white in astonishment. She also had a blank expression on her face. Especially when his family's mischievous and precious eldest princess was among the people who spoke. In an instant, both of them were at a loss. Sister Xian, are you joking? No matter how strong Brother Yun is, it's impossible for him to participate in a battle between God Emperors, right? Chu Chen's cheeks twitched. He risked being knocked on the head as he spoke to Chu Yingzhan. In his opinion, letting Yun Nuoxing, a demigod, participate in a battle between God Emperors was the same as sending her to her death. In a battle of that level, she would die easily. Don't worry so much. Just leave everything to this idiot. We'll just take care of the aftermath, Chu Yingzhan said with a wave of her hand. Yun Nuoxing stumbled and fell to the side. Is it really okay for you to say this in front of me? This is your battle, right? If I make a mistake, won't you take action? So we'll take care of the aftermath. If you mess up, we'll help you clean it up, Chu Yingzhan said casually as she patted her shoulder. Okay. Up to you. Then it's settled. Chu Yingzhan smiled sweetly. Then, she looked at Chu Yeong and said with a smile, Stupid father, you heard it too. Hurry up and prepare a reward for him. Take out your family heirloom or something. He won't be interested in ordinary things. Chu Yeong and the woman in white looked at each other strangely. They looked at each other, then looked at Chu Yingzhan strangely. Then, they looked at Yun Nuoxing who looked indifferent. They were a little confused. That brat seemed to trust the latter. If it was any other time, they would let her do whatever she wanted as long as nothing happened. However, this time, it was not a joke. It was not that they looked down on Yun Nuoxing or anything like that. It was just that they did not think that a demigod could interfere in a battle between high-level god. Instead, she would be putting herself in danger. They had also been at the demigod level, so they naturally knew the strength of this level. Chu Yeong had once fought with a supreme god when he was at the demigod level and won. This was already the top level of combat power. When he stepped into the demigod level, he could even fight a supreme god without losing. Chu Yingzhan seemed to have felt something. She turned around and saw him and the woman in white looking at her. She could not help but wrinkle her nose. She stretched out her hand and patted her father's stomach, saying, Hey, stupid father, your situation is different from his. You always tell me that people are outsiders and people are out of this world. Why don't you dare to believe it now? Have you become short-sighted? This stupid idiot can beat you down. Chu Yingzhan quickly changed the way she addressed him. She waved her fist at him. Yun Nuoxing's cheeks twitched. Why was there another way to address him? Are you kidding? Chu Yeong's cheeks twitched. A demigod level and a supreme god level expert? This difference was not just a few small realms or a few big realms. It was a difference of a whole different concept. No one would believe it, right? Chu Yeong took a deep breath and frowned, saying, Little girl, although I don't know where your confidence comes from, this is not a joke. There must be a limit to fooling around. If you mess around on the battlefield, you will lose your life. Well, I knew that an idiot like you wouldn't believe it. Well, those who believe it casually don't have brains. Chu Yingzhan sighed. The last sentence was said very softly, so no one heard it. She looked at Yun Nuoxing and said, Idiot, why don't you show a little? I know you don't want to reveal your identity. Just show a little to scare this idiot. Do you want me to blow up the music realm? Yun Nuoxing rolled his eyes. What was the point of showing a little? If he showed a full release of energy, he wouldn't be able to take it back. It wouldn't be fun if he blew up the music realm. Yun Nuoxing also felt her father's strange and questioning gaze. He couldn't help but sigh. He scratched his head and said to Chu Yingzhan, "Forget it. Just tell your father and the others honestly. Otherwise, they will say that I'm not a good person. Anyway, they are your family. There's no problem." After that, he thought for a while and said in his soul, "There's no need to talk about the 9 divine temples." When she heard that he could reveal his identity, Chu Yingzhan couldn't help but grin. Her eyes were full of excitement. She stood up immediately and looked very excited. When she talked about Yun Nuoxing's battle achievements, she was so excited that her face was red. It was as if she was introducing herself. Yun Nuoxing also took out a dozen divine weapons as evidence. The first to react was Chu Chun. When he heard that Yun Nuoxing was the divine physique of spiritual reception, he suddenly became excited. He rushed in front of Yun Nuoxing like a fierce tiger pouncing on its prey. The cynical look on his face was replaced by solemnity and reverence. He knew about the yin-yang world. A long time ago, he had a sense of worship for the divine physique of spiritual reception, who he had never met. Later, there was the matter of the divine physique of spiritual reception slaughtering the younger generation gathered in the yin-yang world. He had some worship in his heart. What's more, when the divine physique of spiritual reception appeared in front of him, his eyes became starry. "Big brother Yun, teach me." Chu Qin grabbed Yun Nuoxing's hands excitedly and half knelt in front of him. His tone was very excited. Yun Nuoxing was stunned and did not react for a moment. After a while, he smiled bitterly and patted him on the shoulder, indicating that he should not be so excited. "Teach you? It's okay if you want me to beat you up, but it's a little difficult to teach you. I don't have much experience in teaching others." Divine physique of spiritual reception. Chu Yang was also a little surprised. He did not expect the divine physique of spiritual reception to be his child's friend. Moreover, the three of them knew each other. He did not know much about this legendary physique, but he knew that the divine physique of spiritual reception had stirred up some chaos in the divine world. Many things happened back then, and the aftermath of the divine world had not completely dissipated. He did not expect that he would be lucky enough to meet the divine physique of spiritual reception. "It's you, little guy. If it's you, then it's true." Chu Yang nodded. Just the fact that the 3 eternal weapons had been shattered was enough to make countless people tremble in fear. The power of the eternal weapons was beyond everyone's imagination. However, under the joint attack of the 3 eternal weapons, not only did they fail to kill Yun Nuoxing, but they were also destroyed. From this, it could be seen that the power of the divine body was even more terrifying. Although he did not know that it was actually the power of primal chaos. Well, that's the situation. Yun Nuoxing waved his hand and pointed at Chu Yingzhan with his chin. He said, "This girl said that the house was blown up, so we came to take a look." Chu Yang glanced at the girl indifferently. The latter pretended to be innocent and looked up at the sky, pretending to be serious. Chu Yang watched for a while and didn't see any other reaction from the girl. He could only sigh. In any case, it wasn't the first or second day that this girl had tricked her father. This brat had been tricking her father ever since she was born, Yun Nuoxing, right? "What plans do you have, little brother?" Chu Yang nodded and said. The moment the words, "little brother," came out, Yun Nuoxing shuddered. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "I'll change the way I address you. I don't have any plans now. I have to listen to the information first. You should know very well about the combat power of the Ling Yun battle court. Oh, there's no need to talk about those who are not high-level gods. There's also no need to talk about ordinary high-level gods. Specifically, tell me about the god emperors and some who have grasped special powers." Before he spoke, Yun Nuoxing added another sentence. Chu Yang nodded. He sorted out the information and told him in detail. Generally, it was not much different from what the white-robed girl had said. It was just that there were more details. The Battle Spirit King is in the same realm as me. We're both late-stage God Emperors. To be more specific, he's a 9th Revolution God Emperor, while I'm an 8th Revolution God Emperor. I haven't entered the realm of 1,000 revolutions yet. I've grasped the elements of earth, metal, and lightning. The deity technique he cultivates is inclined towards heavy power. He's also very good at defense. In addition, he can also use lightning to attack. Chu Yang said slowly. He looked up and glanced at Chu Yingzhan, who was playing with a few girls. He continued, however, these are only the powers on the surface. I've never seen the battle court master before. These are just the rumors. As for the specific powers, including willpower and the power of laws, I'm not too sure. Yun Nuoxing nodded. A thick and heavy tortoise shell, including the combined attack formation and the combined formation. If there is an upper rank 3 divine emperor controlling the formation, it will be even more troublesome. Of the 9 great realms of the initial God realm, each realm was further divided into 9 revolutions. However, in these great realms, the realms weren't very important because of the restriction period. It was fine to slowly grind away, unless there was a gap of 1 or 2 great realms. What was more important was the improvement of one's combat power. It was also because of this reason that the initial stage, middle stage, and late stage were used to replace the lower 3 revolutions, middle 3 revolutions, and upper 3 revolutions. Late stage God Emperor? He hasn't entered the realm of 1,000 revolutions yet. At this time, Yun Nuoxing had a rough estimate of the strength of the top-notch forces in the Kuan-Yuan region. At least, she had a definite estimate of the top-notch forces in the northeast region. In the High Cloud Battle Court, the strongest person was only a 9th Revolution God Emperor. However, in the 9 Deities Palace, there were at least 300 experts who had entered the realm of 1,000 revolutions. This didn't include the Great Elder and other top-notch experts. Sister Jean and the others have crossed 40% and 50% of the 1,000 revolutions. However, this is only on the surface. The Hall Master and the others are already at the last threshold of the 1,000 revolutions. If it weren't for the law of heaven and earth, they would have crossed that threshold and entered the lower God realm long ago. Yun Nuoxing thought. The Golden Empress and the others were trying to reach a higher realm. Normally, they would use a secret technique to seal their strength. It wasn't quite right to call it a seal. It was more like they were cultivating again. Their realms were suppressed to the level when they had just entered the realm of 1,000 revolutions. At this time, if they cultivated to 40% of the 1,000 revolutions, when the seal was removed, they would be able to quickly recover to 70% of the 1,000 revolutions realm. As for Ning Qianxue, she wasn't worth considering. Characters who had entered the lower God realm could do whatever they wanted in the divine world. Because of the law of heaven and earth, it was much more difficult to enter the lower God realm than one would imagine. The 9 Hall Masters of the 9 Deities Palace were also stuck at this level for this reason. Thinking of this, Yun Nuoxing suddenly thought of something incredible. In the Light God Palace, everyone was an Emperor God expert. There were only a few dozen people, but there were dozens of Emperor Gods. Of course, Yao Hua was excluded. The people of the Light God Palace cultivated very quickly. It was said that it was because of the inheritance. He didn't know much about it. Who knew what had happened in the past 70 eras? The 9 Deities Palace was not like the one he had built back then. It was very unfamiliar. Seeing Yun Nuoxing lowering her head and pondering, Chu Yang didn't know what to say. Moreover, he had already told her everything he knew. After a long time, Yun Nuoxing came back to her senses. She smiled at him and said, "All right, leave this to me." Chapter 965. Leave it to me. When Yun Nuoxing waved his hand and said those words, Ziyen and the others believed that there was already a conclusion. This matter would be settled perfectly by him, and there would not be any accidents. The Lingyun battle court has 12 god emperors, and a few of them are late-stage god emperors. Chu Yeong looked at him deeply and said, "We don't have much confidence. Although you have the spiritual godly body, you are only a demigod. Can you really deal with them alone?" "Stupid father. Didn't I say it clearly enough? What if I am chased away by you?" Chu Yingzhan was anxious. Yun Nuoxing waved his hand and smiled. He would not be chased away by a few words. After all, it was that crazy girl who asked him to help. Even if I can't get rid of all the god emperors in one go, I can at least make those late-stage god emperors go to hell together. As for the rest, even if they can survive, their vitality will be greatly damaged. At that time, Chu Yeong understood immediately and nodded heavily. At that time, leave the rest to us, if you can really damage the vitality of their god emperors. Spreading his hands, Yun Nuoxing leaned on the sofa and sighed. The other side has god emperors who specialize in defense. Their tortoise shell is very troublesome, but it's not a big problem. Leave it to me. As for the results, I can't say. Anyway, I'll leave the rest to you. Originally, a battle between god emperors wouldn't have reached the final battle so quickly through a letter of challenge. Chu Yeong scratched his head and said, "The Lingyun battle court saw that our Chu realm had not been established for a long time, and there were fewer god emperors. They had a crushing advantage over us, so they planned to destroy us in one go. Under normal circumstances, the battle would have lasted for a long time. The battle line would have stretched very far, and there would even be a few important battle points to divide the battlefield." Yun Nuoxing rolled his eyes and immediately understood what the reason was. "You're quite the target of jealousy." Chu Yeong smiled helplessly. The Lingyun battle court had decided to kill him before he reached that stage. Otherwise, they would not have attacked him so openly. They were afraid that when he grew to the point where he was not afraid of them, they would eliminate the Lingyun battle court. Then it's settled. The battle will begin in 3 days. Before that, let's rest and prepare. Chu Yeong twisted his wrist and nodded to everyone. "I still have some things to do. I'll go and prepare." Watching him walk out of the room, the others also stretched and relaxed. In this place filled with immortal qi, it was not easy to maintain a serious expression for a long time. "Idiot, my father," Chu Yeong said. "Chu Yeong, Chu Yus." Chu Yingzhan walked behind Yun Nuoxing and hugged the little magic on his head. Mei Mao glanced at him and said, "Am I that petty?" Yun Nuoxing rolled his eyes. Chu Yingzhan thought for a while. After a while, she unexpectedly shook her head. "All right, you can be quite generous sometimes. Yes, the kind that is heartless." Yun Nuoxing choked and almost couldn't breathe. He raised his head and glared at her. Then, he sighed. "Don't worry. Since I promised you that I would come and help, I won't leave so easily. Unless your family chases me away with a broom." "I won't do that." Chu Yingzhan patted his head in annoyance. "So, why are you free now?" "In a pavilion in the Tsang Emperor City." Even though the battle between the Soaring Cloud Battle Court and the Chu realm was known to everyone in the city, it didn't completely affect the activities of other people. The business of the restaurant was booming as usual, the blacksmith shop was also bustling with sparks, and the medicine shop was also filled with the fragrance of medicine. To be honest, no matter who won the battle between the Chu realm and the Lingyun battle court, they would only have a new leader. Everyone was nervous about the upcoming battle. However, there was an unwritten rule in the cultivation world that mortals couldn't be involved in the battle. Although the mortals and low-level cultivators in the city were nervous about the battle, they still had to live their lives. They couldn't stop living just because the godlike figures above them were fighting. Therefore, the battle between the two factions didn't affect the activities in the city at all. The people on the streets were more or less frowning, but they only showed it on their faces. At this moment, Yun Nuoxing and the others were leisurely sitting in the pavilion, drinking tea and chatting. Originally, Yun Nuoxing was an important strategic figure, so no one felt nervous from him. It was as if the upcoming battle wasn't worth mentioning. Only now did everyone remember that this guy was a heavenly god and had seen many big scenes. What was there to be nervous about in a battle between godly emperors? Relax, buddy. It's true that the battle is coming, but we still have to live day by day. Drink tea when you need to drink tea, cultivate when you need to cultivate, and sleep when you're tired. At this moment, it's better to be casual and relaxed than to be nervous. Yun Nuoxing poured a cup of tea for the people around him and sat down leisurely. His tone was very relaxed. Even if the sky falls, there's a tall one to hold it up. There's no hurry. Big Brother Yun is right. Chu Chen took a sip of tea, and the frivolous temperament appeared on his face again. Chu Yingzhan looked at him and wrinkled her nose. Then, she said to Yun Nuoxing, "Don't lead my brother astray." "Aya, he won't be led astray. This kid has always been like this." Yun Nuoxing held a cup of tea with one hand and shook it gently with the other. "Yes, yes." Chu Xianling nodded in agreement. Chu Yingzhan was amused. These two guys used to be quite clingy with her. The first time she met Yun Nuoxing was when they were being hunted down, and both of them had a good impression of him. Now, they were both siding with an outsider, especially her younger sister. She seemed to have a special liking for that blockhead. In the past, she had never seen Chu Xianling pay attention to a man. Now, whenever she had time, she would ask about that blockhead. Was she possessed? "This place is not bad. It's quite lively." She stretched his back and looked down from the middle of the floor. There were many young and beautiful women dancing on the stage in the middle. Their voluptuous figures and snake-like waists attracted the attention of most of the men in the pavilion. "You said that you wanted to come to the best tea house, so I thought that this was the only place. However, the blockhead might not like this place." Chu Yingzhan shrugged and sighed unhappily. "Yes, it's quite noisy." Yun Nuoxing glanced down and put down her teacup. Her eyelids drooped slightly. "I don't like the atmosphere here. There are all kinds of gazes sweeping over me and judging me. It's as though I'm in prison and I'm being stared at coldly by the soldiers. It's disgusting." Everyone felt a little helpless. Ever since Yun Nuoxing retrieved Quarter Moon's identity and memories, her personality had become even frilier. She was very ethereal, as though she would ascend to heaven at any time. She also preferred silence, and was about to enter the state of old age. The army of the Lingyun battle court is already ready. That letter of challenge is just a death sentence. It's so that they can all return to the shrinking domain and be wiped out in one fell swoop. However, that didn't seem to be the case. After all, the voices coming from the lower floor were indeed a little noisy. Everyone turned their gazes over. Chu Yingzhan and Mei Mao were ice-cold. They wanted to see who said such words. The immortal origin rankings of the immortal origin world only changes once every few years. The person from the shrinking domain was lucky enough to obtain the first position in his generation. After that, he turned the Kuan Yuan region upside down and was chased by the Lingyun battle court to the point that he had nowhere to go. He had no choice but to flee to other regions. When he matured, he returned to this place and established the shrinking domain, becoming the sole power in the Azure Emperor city. It's a pity that the old powers and the new powers would never stop fighting. It's common for one to swallow the other. As for the new powers, unless they're lucky, they'll always be swallowed up by the old powers. It's said that the owner of the shrinking domain isn't someone from the 8 origin world. He came from the lower floor, probably from the 7 origin world. There's such a thing? In the past, there were also people from the other primordial realms who established themselves in the 8 origin world. Those self-proclaimed geniuses who gave themselves the title of emperors, everyone knows what happened to them in the end. They still dared to give themselves the title of emperors, claiming that they're the children of heaven? They can't even leave the city. What a joke. People from the other primordial realms should have a heart of reverence when they come to the 8 origin world. They should just tuck their tails between their legs and behave themselves. Yet, they still dared to establish a power so brazenly. Aren't they looking down on the 8 origin world too much? This place isn't the small and weak world they came from. Being able to come here and see different sceneries and different worlds, they should feel gratitude in their hearts and live on humbly. The people in the pavilion all had strange expressions on their faces. Some of them were from the Azure Emperor City, and had a good impression of the shrinking domain. Because of the existence of the shrinking domain, this place was able to maintain peace for a long period of time. Now that they were being ridiculed like this, they felt extremely puzzled in their hearts. They wanted to rebut, but they didn't dare to open their mouth. Because those who ridiculed the shrinking domain were all people from the major powers that had a friendly relationship with the Lingyun battle court. If the two of them fought, it was obvious which side they would stand on. Chu Yingzhan clenched her fists so tightly that the sound of bones cracking could be heard. The wine cup in her hand shattered into pieces as the wine dripped onto the table. Her jade-like hands were trembling, yet there was no expression on her face. Pooh! A burst of laughter abruptly rang out, causing the gazes of the people in the pavilion to shift upwards. On the 4th level, there was a large group of people sitting by the railings. Their auras varied from strong to weak. That laughter originated from the mouth of a handsome young man in white. His body was trembling uncontrollably because of his laughter. "This brother, do you feel that I've said something wrong?" Among that group of people, there was a fair-skinned young man in luxurious robes who inclined his head. His eyes flashed with sharpness as he spoke. "Wrong? Of course you're wrong. Why don't you say that you've been wrong from the start to the end? You've made a grave mistake and are beyond redemption." Yuan Shi stopped laughing. His tone turned indifferent as he continued, "In the myriad divine realms, strength is the most important thing. The origin of heroes doesn't matter. Chu Shen didn't have the help of any other major powers and relied solely on his own strength. He used several 100,000 years to step into the late-stage God-Emperor realm and was close to comprehending the 1,000-layered 100 revolutions domain. He then opened up a world of his own, the shrinking domain, and recruited disciples. Chu Shen relied on his strength to obtain this title. Could it be that all of you are merely talking gods? Relying on your mouths to ascend to godhood? Yuan Shi's soft voice contained a thick sense of sarcasm. He couldn't even be bothered to conceal it. This group of initial stage deities were so weak that it was pitiful. Little Moon and Yor would be able to catch up to them in a short period of time. Yet, they were still loudly discussing how powerful a God-Emperor realm expert was. They had seen arrogant people before, but they had never seen people who were arrogant to such an extent. Many people in the pavilion heaved a sigh of relief as they nodded their heads silently. They were all residents of the Azure Emperor City and were protected by the shrinking domain. At this moment, when they heard that there was someone who dared to be so arrogant and disrespectful to the people protecting them, they didn't dare to say anything because of the strength of the other party. But now that they saw someone standing up for the shrinking domain and Chu Shen, they were naturally extremely happy. "Who are you?" That person narrowed his eyes and coldly spoke. But just as he spoke, a silver-white figure suddenly arced through the air, landing on their table. "Pa!" The crisp sound of something shattering resounded through the entire pavilion. Even the table trembled from the impact of that figure. The fragments of the wine cup flew in all directions. Although the fragments weren't enough to cause any harm to them, it was enough to force them to react. After the group of people dodged, that figure glanced at them with a cold gaze. Nightmare stretched his neck. His right hand was still in the posture of throwing the wine cup. When he saw the cold gazes of those people, he sneered in his heart. After that, he emotionlessly spoke, "Shut up. You are disturbing this daddy's peaceful morning. Think carefully before you speak." Yuan Shi took out a new teacup and poured tea for Nightmare. He smiled faintly, There are people dying every moment in the myriad gods' world. Some people don't even know how they died. Don't let yourself become the next one because of your mouth. Even if you die in such a situation, no one will pay attention to a nameless person like you. Indeed, your words make sense. Let's not talk about nameless people. Even if a major power was annihilated one day, they wouldn't even know. That person in luxurious robes nodded. He poured himself a cup of tea and coldly laughed, just like the music world of today. He didn't know who these people were, but he knew that they should have some relationship with the music world. Because they couldn't bear to listen to the music world's nonsense, they decided to speak up to defend the music world. The others were also quietly watching this scene. The people gathered here were all young people from the Azure Emperor City or the Kuan origin region. Some of them had extraordinary statuses, while some had no backing but were extremely powerful. Right now, all of them were spectators, waiting to see how this matter would develop. As for those who resided in the Azure Emperor City, they all hoped that Yuan Shi and the others would be able to ruthlessly teach that fellow who spoke rudely a lesson. This music world's overlord doesn't know what's good for him. Don't you think so? A mere person from the lower world, it's his honor to be able to ascend to the myriad gods' realm. Regardless of what they were in the past, whether they were tigers or dragons, they would have to tuck their tails between their legs. To think that he actually dares to be so arrogant, establishing his own world. Heh! That person stood up and surveyed the surroundings. He then raised his arms and asked to the crowd, "What do you all think?" Many people coldly laughed but didn't reply. They continued drinking their tea. Yuan Shi and the others frowned. They could tell that this fellow was born and bred in the myriad gods' realm. He was extremely arrogant and looked down on visitors from the lower worlds, feeling that he was a cut above them. They didn't know where this fellow's arrogance came from. They would never look down on visitors from the lower world. Hence, they couldn't understand why this fellow was so arrogant. You are a human, but the people from the 7 origin realms aren't humans? It's just that their innate environment is slightly better. What do you have to be arrogant about? For trash like you, if you throw away the false halo bestowed upon you by others, you are nothing. Nightmare coldly laughed. Your arrogance isn't any less than mine, the luxurious person calmly said. The luxuriously dressed man said calmly. He waved his hand and pointed at the pavilion. The people gathered here are all the young elites of the 10th state. Many of them came from the immortal origin realm and are much stronger than the two of you. However, none of them are as arrogant and ignorant as you are. You're really noisy. A cold and indifferent voice that seemed to have emerged from the 9th level of hell interrupted that person's words. It carried a coldness that was enough to freeze the air, causing everyone in the pavilion to shiver. The hot tea in the teacups had unknowingly turned into ice cubes. That person's pupils shrank slightly. His gaze shifted slightly and landed on the figure with long, colorful hair. He slowly stood up and turned around. A pair of colorful eyes stared at him emotionlessly, as if he was staring at a weed on the side of the road. Apologize. Apologize to Deity Chu and all the people from the lower realms. I'll spare your life. Otherwise, Yun Nuoshing narrowed her eyes. Her eyes were filled with colorful light. That person's expression trembled, and he was extremely shocked. He had seen high-level gods before, but their gazes weren't as frightening as this person's. He actually felt an irresistible pressure from a demigod? How dare you! That person shouted coldly. He dispelled the feeling that he was imagining things. He was somewhat surprised by Yun Nuoshing's beauty. He coldly laughed. If you personally come down and dance for me, I can forgive your ignorant disrespect. A mere demigod dares to stand up for me. I'm afraid you'll become someone else's. Boom! An irresistible pressure suddenly descended from the sky, cutting off the last trace of sound. That luxurious person and the people beside him suddenly paled. Their legs directly fell to the ground. Their upper bodies were prostrated on the ground. Their faces were pressed against the ground, and their noses were crushed. Creak, a huge gravitational force pressed on them. Even a beginner god couldn't withstand such a huge gravitational force. The bones in their bodies made strange sounds as if they were about to be deformed. The group of people knelt on the ground in a very humiliating position. Their faces were flushed, and the veins on their hands were bulging. They wanted to resist with all their might, but it was difficult for them to do anything. I am from Tai Hua Mountain. That person raised his head firmly. He could only see Yun Nuoxing's godlike figure. Billowing black gas faintly appeared from his body. His eyes were frighteningly cold. I don't mind seeing Tai Hua Mountain's team in the army 2 days later. Come if you have the ability. Yun Nuoxing's eyes were filled with cold light. He never liked to talk too much. If someone didn't listen or submit, then he would beat them until they were obedient. He would beat them until they were convinced. Chapter 966. The large pavilion was completely silent. The group of people from Tai Hua Mountain at the entrance supported each other as they staggered away. The luxuriously dressed man's face was drained of blood, and his aura was so weak that it was undetectable. He had been directly crippled, and he had fallen from a beginner god to a mortal. His life source had also been cut by more than half. He had aged a lot in an instant, and his black hair had lost its color, turning into a deathly pale color. Everyone in the pavilion was horrified. They retracted their trembling hands from that group of people and looked at the center of the pavilion. There was a huge icicle. The icicle pierced straight into the sky from the center of the ice, like a blossoming ice flower. Its edges and corners were releasing shocking cold air. The cold air released by the black ice could even freeze one's meridians. Their gazes paused on the black icicle for a while, then they turned their gazes to the rainbow-haired woman upstairs, whose gaze was still cold. They felt a little confused. There was a god and underworld expert in the group of people from Tai Hua Mountain, but he was still crippled by a mere demigod. She didn't even put in much effort. It was just a snap of her fingers. No one could see what happened in that instant. They didn't even feel the fluctuation of energy, and the attack had already been completed. Those who seek death have their own way of dying. Tai Hua Mountain, you think too highly of yourselves. You should feel honored to have our boss personally take action. Kneel down and lick my feet with satisfaction, worm. Nightmare glanced at the group of people at the entrance and sneered. The luxuriously dressed man trembled. The intense pain from his entire body made his eyes red, and his face aged a few decades. He stared at them with a venomous gaze, and his voice came out from between his teeth. Hiss! Just you wait. You will die very miserably, very, boom! An extremely bright golden flame pillar shot into the sky. The holy light cut through the haze in the sky, sprinkling a patch of blazing sun and golden ashes. The group of people from Tai Hua Mountain was directly hit by this golden flame pillar and flew hundreds of thousands of meters into the sky. It was estimated that there would be hundreds of landing points. Yun Nuoxing looked at the charred floor by the door, then turned her head to look at Ming helplessly. She sighed and said, "You stupid angel, I asked them to go back and report this so that we wouldn't have to do it again. Why did you split it into a few hundred portions? It's too noisy. It's not a problem to let someone else handle such a small matter." Ming stuck out her tongue, then looked down at the crowd and said, "Who here is familiar with Tai Hua Mountain? Go back and tell them that the music domain has declared war on them. Let's have the final battle the day after tomorrow." Those few informants have been divided into hundreds of groups and are floating in the sky 100,000 miles away. We have to find someone familiar to talk to. Everyone's expression was horrified, their faces turning green. This girl's face was incomparably beautiful, incomparably sacred, making one's heart calm down with a single glance, unable to have any thoughts of sullying her. However, How could this face speak such terrifying words? How could it be divided into several hundred pieces? By the way, those who don't come are grandsons, Yuan, she said again. Yun Nuoshing waved her hand to make the dark ice dissipate. She sat down and drank a mouthful of tea, as if nothing had happened. Chu Xianling looked at her with extraordinary splendor, while Chu Chen looked at her with even more admiration. It could only be said that they had not been frightened by Yun Nuoshing. Perhaps in 2 days they would be able to see her most frightening side. At that time they might have a different view of her. Chu Yingzhan looked at her in a daze. Mei Mao's expression was complicated, but she was also somewhat touched. She did not expect that Yun Nuoshing and Yuan Shi would go to such an extent for her, although Chu Yingzhan reached out and grabbed Yun Nuoshing's arm. She rolled her eyes and muttered, "You did this because you thought it was fun, right? You even attracted a force for me? Are you really okay with that?" Yun Nuoshing was stunned for a moment. She laughed dryly and nodded, admitting that she did this because she was bored and had nothing to do. However, it was more or less because she wanted to vent her anger for this girl. "You're the one who's holding it in. Your face turned red just now." Chu Yingzhan was stunned. "Is it very obvious? It's all on your face." Everyone sighed and nodded. What she was thinking just now was all on her face. Otherwise, Yun Nuoshing would not have stood up for her. If it were any other time, he would not have cared about this. Moreover, you've only dealt with the Lingyun battle court. You have other plans, right? It's rare that you've dealt with such a big enemy. You'll definitely take this opportunity to expand your forces. If your father has some ideas, he'll make the Chujia an impregnable place. He'll make the Chujia a powerful force that can protect his family, Yun Nuoshing said. When the time comes, we will change our official name. With the Azure Emperor City as the center, the surrounding regions and cities will be our territory. We will gradually expand our territory and become the overlord of the 10th prefecture of the Earth Cloud continent. We will then develop our subordinate forces. Yuan Shi nodded and said, "As we develop, we will become famous. Suddenly, one day, some famous forces and the envoys of the 9 Shrine will suddenly come." Nightmare waved his hands and grinned. "Congratulations, congratulations." Little Moon nodded. "You guys." Chu Yingzhan looked at everyone in a daze. She did not think so much at all. Her eyelids drooped slightly. "You guys just thought of it, right?" "Just thought of it." Yes, I just thought of it." Yun Nuoshing, Yuan Shi, and Mo Yen all calmly nodded their heads and straightforwardly agreed, causing her to not know whether to laugh or cry. These 3 fellows, she was very touched. In the face of an unprecedented crisis, at least for them, this group of friends that she had met by chance had never said anything about giving up or retreating. They had even planned for the future. Although she was certain that these 3 fellows wanted to tease. They wanted to toy with the battle court of Soaring Cloud. After all, no matter how powerful the 10 districts in the northeast of Kuan-Yuan were, they wouldn't be able to put any pressure on these 3 fellows. After all, the forces behind these 3 fellows were transcendent existences that stood tall on the big stage of the divine world. As for who would be left after being played by that guy, she did not know. However, he did not hold back when he attacked. She guessed that not even a speck of dust would be left. "What is this immortal origin world?" Yun Nuoshing suddenly asked. He had heard about this so-called immortal origin world a few times. It was something new that he had only heard about after coming to the Earth Cloud continent. "I remember that it is a cultivation treasure land in the Earth Cloud continent. It is a naturally formed hidden space that is about the size of 2 or 3 medium-sized cities. It is filled with fake fairy chi. I can only say that it is fake. Compared to the fairy chi in your bodies, it is much weaker." Yuan Shi pointed at Yun Nuoshing and Xian and said, "However, the power there is precious to others. The fairy chi has the miraculous effect of improving one's body and soul." As Yun Nuoshing spoke, He lifted little purple soul, who was sitting in his arms, and said, "Look at this girl. Her soul is filled with fairy chi. In a sense, her life is eternal in concept." Little purple soul blinked. Mei Mao looked at everyone. Although she did not understand what Yun Nuoshing was saying, she knew that he was saying that she was amazing. The little girl immediately became happy. She hugged Yun Nuoshing's head and acted coquettishly. At the same time, it can also change one's temperament and appearance. You will become more beautiful. Yuan Shi coughed dryly. He opened his right eye and glanced at Yun Nuoshing. Everyone nodded and focused their attention on Yun Nuoshing. The latter was also stunned. Then, his cheeks twitched crazily. If you want to say that I have become neither a man nor a woman, just say it. It is not my fault that I have become beautiful. No, little star has directly become a girl. Xian smiled and reached out to pinch his nose. Yun Nuoshing was speechless. In short, that place is where the younger generation of the Kuan-Yuan region will go. Moreover, no one of the major classes will meet there. The minimum requirement to enter is to be at the immortal level. The maximum requirement cannot be higher than a heavenly god. In other words, only high-level gods cannot enter, Chu Yingzhan said. Chu Chun raised his hand and said helplessly, "The Immortal Origin ranking of the Immortal Origin realm is a ranking list that evaluates one's talent and combat power. It is said that the person who occupies the first position will receive a mysterious reward. Although Dad has been first before, he has never told us what the reward is. He only said that if we want to know, we can go up and take a look." After sitting for another 15 minutes, everyone stood up and flew towards the Immortal Lake. They entered it and returned to the Chu-Yuan realm. "Xian your father is looking for you. Come to the Great Hall and ask your friends to come as well." Chu Zhangping's voice rang out in the ears of everyone, causing them to raise their heads and exchange glances with each other. "You guys can come as well." Chu Yingzhan spoke to Yun Nuoshing and the others. Everyone waved their hands. In any case, they had nothing to do now, so there was no harm in making a trip there. In the central mountain range of the Chu-Yuan realm, the most majestic palace was extremely lively. Streams of people walked in and out, all of them had hurried expressions on their faces. Those who entered and exited this place were all carrying the highest orders from the Chu-Yuan realm. They were all nervously preparing for the great battle that would happen 2 days later. In the central great hall of the palace, powerful auras could be faintly sensed. In the great hall, Chu Yeyang, Chu Zhangping and the other experts all had solemn expressions on their faces as they stared at the map on the table. This was a gigantic map that clearly depicted the terrain of the Azure Emperor City, as well as the surrounding million miles. There were 2 red dots on the map. One was located far away in the mountain range, while the other was located in the Azure Emperor City. Naturally, these represented the 2 major powers. There were many other red dots on the map, but as for what they represented, other than the person who drew them, no one knew. Everyone was discussing in low voices. These people with powerful auras were all peak stage deities, and were all core members of the Azure Emperor City. At this moment, Chu Yeyang's ears were buzzing as he listened to the conversations of the people around him. He felt a headache coming on. Waving his hands, he wanted them to quieten down. However, a beautiful woman whose looks could topple empires stealthily walked over and spoke. "Yeyang, that group of children is here." Chu Yeyang regained his senses. He coughed lightly, indicating for everyone to quieten down. A moment later, a creaking sound could be heard as the door was pushed open. After that, Yun Nuoshing and the others slowly walked in under the gazes of many young people outside the Great Hall. They even closed the door behind them, causing the group of young people to feel extremely curious. For such a solemn meeting, the people gathered here were all the leaders of the Chu-Yuan realm and the other major powers of the Azure Emperor City. Yet now, a group of young people suddenly walked in, causing them to feel extremely curious. The other people in the great hall also turned their gazes over in puzzlement. Oh, they are here. You guys, second brother, third uncle, move aside slightly and let them squeeze in. Chu Yeong waved his hands to Yun Nuoshing and the others as he pointed to a spot beside him. Those few young men nodded in understanding and walked to the back of Chu Yeong, creating an empty space. After that, Yun Nuoshing and the others squeezed into the empty space, allowing Yun Nuoshing to stand in the center. Deity Chu these children are? Someone asked in puzzlement. This was a meeting place. Wouldn't it be breaking the rules if a group of initial stage demigods barged in? Don't worry about it. Chu Yeong waved his hands and smiled at Chu Yingzhan, who was winking at him. After that, he cast a deep glance at Yun Nuoshing and pointed to the map. This is the current map. The Azure Emperor City is here and the army of the Lingyun Battle Court is in the mountains. As for their numbers, we aren't too sure. I know, I can already see them. Yun Nuoshing calmly replied. You can see the situation inside? Everyone was stunned. Chu Yeong also looked at him in astonishment. The place where the army was stationed was blocked by a barrier. They only knew that there was a large army hidden there, but they couldn't see what was inside. Chu Yingzhan and the others were also curious. They didn't know when this fellow had investigated. Yun Nuoshing looked at everyone and nodded. He said, 13 emperor gods, 50 emperors of the underworld, 103 kings of the underworld, a total of 13,025 mid-level gods, and 100,000 low-level gods. After that, there are no more. As for the low-level gods, I can't count them anymore. What I can be sure of is that the low-level gods are consumables, and once they are used up, they can be thrown away. The army camp is filled with low-level gods, and their status is about the same as the soldiers. Previously, everyone thought that he was just messing around. Now that he had revealed such specific data, everyone was shocked. First, they were shocked at the strength of the other party. In fact, they were shocked at how this guy knew so clearly. It was as if he had stayed on the other side for a period of time and knew everything. Among the 13 God Emperors, one initial stage God Emperor is a magic array master. I don't know the details, but based on the strength of his soul power, he should be at the level of an 8th stage God Master. That War Spirit King is also among them. If your description is correct, that person should be him. Yun Nuoshing continued. Everyone was silent for a moment. A magic array master at the level of a great master couldn't be underestimated. If it was handled well, he alone could turn the situation around. There are so many gods, and War Spirit King is also leading the army personally. He must have used 80% of the combat power of the battle court of Lingyun. He must be determined to win this battle and completely crush them, someone said in a low voice. Yun Nuoshing stared at the map with his colorful eyes. There was a blue light circulating in his eyes. He raised his head and looked at Chu Yeong. He said, What about all your combat power? The person who walked to Chu Yeong's side was probably the second brother that he had mentioned just now. When he heard Yun Nuoshing's words, he couldn't help but reply, primary level gods. Before he could say anything, Yun Nuoshing waved his hand and interrupted him. He said, Just tell me about the high-level gods. Chu Yeong's second brother was slightly stunned. He looked at his younger brother in confusion. When he saw him nod, he also nodded and said, There are only 6 God Emperors that can be sent. There are 30 Emperor of the Underworld and 66 King of the Underworld. By the way, all the important people are here. After getting the specific answer, Yun Nuoshing nodded. He propped himself up on the table and stared at the map. The light in his eyes was a little strange. No one could guess what he was thinking. Chu Yingzhan pulled on Xian's sleeve. The latter turned around and saw her winking at him. He thought for a while and shook his head, indicating that he didn't know what Yun Nuoshing was thinking. He's probably thinking about how to get rid of them all in one go. Xian hesitated and guessed. Ming and the others agreed with this answer. A certain someone who hated trouble was probably looking for a place to start. Everyone in the hall looked at each other. Many high-level gods had some opinions about these little fellows who had suddenly barged in. The meeting hall was such a serious place. They couldn't be serious when a group of little fellows suddenly appeared. However, when they saw that Chu Xin didn't say anything and was even looking forward to it, they couldn't say anything. They could only hold it in. Yun Nuoxing muttered to himself for a long time. After about 15 minutes, some people in the hall who were more impatient than him couldn't hold it in anymore. They couldn't help but say, "Little fellow, do you see anything?" This person's words made Yun Nuoxing raise his head and look at him. He then turned to Chu Xin, nodded and said, "Pen." Chu Xin was stunned. He subconsciously handed over the feather pen on the table. Yun Nuoxing took it. Under the gaze of dozens of people, he gently drew a huge circle around the red dot on the mountain range. According to the ratio, the diameter of the circle was about 100,000 miles. Circle? Everyone was dumbfounded. What did this circle represent? Are there any spies or other things in this circle? Yun Nuoxing asked. Chu Yeong's second brother scratched his head and said helplessly, "Some people have been arranged in the forest to investigate the background of the Lingyun battle court. Unfortunately, that place has been blocked. Maybe it's the work of the magic formation master you mentioned." "Retreat. Don't leave anyone there," Yun Nuoxing said. Xian and the others instantly understood that this fellow was going to open up a huge hole in the Kuan-Yuan region again. He wanted the people from the Chu Jie to retreat in advance so that they wouldn't be accidentally injured. Under such an indiscriminate attack, even his own people wouldn't be spared. "Let's do it tonight. Prepare all your forces. We'll decide the outcome in a short time," Yun Nuoxing said. Everyone was confused. Even Chu Xin didn't know what to do. Someone couldn't help but ask, "Sneak attack? Sneak attack at night?" Of course not. With that magic formation master around, all kinds of sneak attacks are useless. Instead, we'll fall into the enemy's territory and fall into a disadvantageous situation. Oh right. As Yun Nuoxing spoke, she thought of something. She grabbed the feather pen and pondered for a while. Then, she drew another circle between the Lingyun battle court's army and the Tsang Emperor City. This circle was closer to the Tsang Emperor City. "Here, you can set up magic formations and traps here. Just in case, don't make too big of a commotion. It won't be good if we disturb the enemy." Chu Xin touched his chin and pondered for a while. He said, "You want to lure them out and defeat them one by one?" No. It's very troublesome to explain. Anyway, tonight." Yun Nuoxing waved her hand and was stunned for a moment. She looked at Chu Xin and said seriously, "Let me ask you in advance. If the 13 god emperors are weakened by 60%, can you deal with them?" Everyone was at a loss again. This guy spoke in chunks, and at this time, he said something that no one could understand. "Will it work? 13 god emperors with 40% of their strength. Can't you kill them with a few thousand people?" Yun Nuoxing urged them to come back to their senses. Chu Xin thought for a while and nodded. He said, "If they are only at 40% of their strength, then the Battle Spirit King and the other god emperors are not a threat. We can deal with them." The others nodded. If the 13 god emperors were only at 40% of their strength, they would definitely be beaten to death. However, then let's do it this way. Knowing what everyone was thinking, Yun Nuoxing waved her hand and didn't explain. She smiled and said, "Tonight, when the 2 moons are in the sky, it will be time to act." Chapter 967. In the conference hall, after Yun Nuoxing said those words, he walked towards the door in a confident and at-ease manner. Ziyen and the others hurriedly followed after him. However, Chu Yingzhan stayed behind. She still had some things to say. Before Yun Nuoxing and the others left, she had already said that they would go to her place first. After Yun Nuoshing and his group slowly left, everyone regained their senses. They looked at each other and frowned. If it wasn't for the fact that she was a girl and seemed to be acquainted with Chushin, someone would have chased her out a long time ago. Chushin, can this person's words be trusted? If the other party really mobilized so many forces, I'm afraid it would be difficult for us to resist. Someone couldn't help but ask. No matter how true Yun Nuoshing's words were, he was still just a demigod. It was normal for people to not believe his word. Moreover, many people treated him as a girl. That's a great god that I invited with great difficulty. This time, he gave me face and didn't mention any requests or fees. I beg you, please don't say such insulting words in front of him. If you anger him and make him leave, I'll cry for you to see. Chu Yingzhan exploded in an instant. Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Everyone present was quite familiar with Chu Yingzhan. After all, she was the eldest princess of the Chu clan. She was a little devil who caused trouble in the Chu clan's Azure Emperor city all day long. It was impossible for them not to be familiar with her. Niece Yingzhan, this isn't a question of whether to invite him or not. Besides, what can he do when he's only a demigod? A middle-aged man frowned and couldn't help but ask. If you dare to say it in front of him, I'll pull out all the flowers in your house tomorrow. Chu Yingzhan gnashed her teeth. That man's entire body trembled. His cheeks trembled as he shook his head with a bitter smile. All right. I won't say it in front of him. Then why don't you tell us who that little girl is? Pfft. Chu Yingzhan had just drank a mouthful of water. At this moment, she was so shocked that she spat it out. Her charming face trembled as she couldn't help but sigh. Didn't you guys sense his aura? He's a man. At this moment, everyone in the conference hall burst into laughter. His background is a little complicated, and he doesn't allow me to reveal it. With his status, a casual word from him could change the entire Kuan-Yuan region tomorrow. It's because he's worried about this that he chose to do it himself. You don't have to worry about anything. Just listen to him and gather all our forces tonight. I have a rough idea of what that lunatic wants to do. Grumbling, Chu Yingzhan patted Chu Shin's shoulder and said, I'm leaving first. If I don't go back, those guys will tear my house down. After she finished speaking, her delicate figure flashed and disappeared from the spot, leaving behind a group of people staring at each other. Third brother, what do you think? You make a decision. I'm a little confused now. Chu Yeong's second brother walked forward with a wry smile, patted his younger brother's shoulder, and asked. Everyone nodded in agreement. It was still up to Chu Shin to decide what to do. If he nodded, everyone would be ready tonight. If he shook his head, they would just wait for the fight to the death 2 days later. From the looks of it, they would have to fight eventually. This battle was unavoidable. Chu Shin's heart was also in a mess. Chu Yingzhan didn't reveal Yun Nuoshing's identity, but he at least knew that guy's superficial identity. Based on what he had done in the past, it was possible that he could really lead them to reverse the situation. This might be an opportunity. Chu Yingzhan was very clear about Yun Nuoshing's power, so she was very relieved. However, if she didn't say it, no one would know. Moreover, if she just said it, no one would believe her, so she was too lazy to say it. This caused the situation to be a little awkward. On one hand, Chu Shin believed that his daughter wouldn't act recklessly at this critical moment. He also believed that the words spiritual divine body could bring about a miracle. However, this was a matter of life and death for the entire music world, so he didn't dare to gamble. Scratching his black hair, Chu Shin sighed and looked at the old man who had been sitting at the side without saying a word. He said, "Old man, what do you think?" The old man in a white robe suddenly became the focus of attention. Everyone looked at him. From the beginning to the end, he hadn't said a word. Now that he was called by Chu Shin, he opened his pale eyes and glanced at the map. After pondering for a long time, he raised his head and looked at Chu Shin. He said, Follow your heart and choose. I can't see through that child. Chu Xin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This ball was kicked to him again, which made him very confused. After hesitating for a long time, a touch of determination flashed across his eyes. He took a deep breath and nodded. He said, "Tonight, let's prepare." Everyone also relaxed. Then, their expressions became serious. They looked at each other and nodded. It was decided. Then, let's start preparing now. Let's see what kind of miracle that little guy can bring to them. After giving some orders, Chu Xun gave some instructions to his second brother and third uncle. In a flash, he left the place. Chu Zhongping also left with him. In Chu Yingzhan's small palace, a group of people were lying on the sofa. Their faces were full of laziness, and there was no sense of nervousness about the upcoming battle. Chu Yingzhan looked at this group of lazy people and sighed heavily. "Can't you be more serious? What's there to be serious about? You should not care about your appearance at home and be more casual," Yun Nuoxing said lazily. Chu Yingzhan was furious. "This is my home. I didn't say it was my home. I don't have a home." Yun Nuoxing snorted. Her body tilted, and she rested her head on Xian's soft thighs. She let out a long sigh of relief. That unintentional sentence made everyone's expression freeze. They looked at each other. Chu Yingzhan also shut up. Her expression was a little unnatural. She felt that she had said something wrong. Only Chu Chun and Chu Xianling were still a little confused. However, they felt that the atmosphere was a little strange, so they didn't say anything. They just kept quiet. Now that he thought about it, other than Yun Nuoxing, Ming, Little Purple Soul, and Bing Er, everyone else had a place that was like home. Only the four of them. The three little girls treated Yun Nuoxing's place as their home. The person closest to them in their lives was him, but he himself, Chu Yingzhan, quickly shook her head and said, "What do you plan to do? Blow up the area that you've encircled?" Yun Nuoxing straightened up, glanced at her, and said lazily, "Haven't you already guessed it?" Then, her body tilted again. This time, she rested her head on Ming's thighs. She even snuggled a little, making the angel girl blush. All right. I knew it. Then what are you doing now? You've made the entire music world busy with just one sentence. Do you need to prepare anything in advance?" Chu Yingzhan waved her hand in annoyance. She pushed Chu Xianling to the side and sat down next to her. She looked at Yun Nuoxing, who was squinting her eyes and breathing weakly. "Oh, for the night to accumulate strength to rest," Yun Nuoxing murmured. She seemed to be about to fall asleep. Chu Yingzhan's expression became very funny. After a long time, she glared at him. Just as she was about to open her mouth to say something, Ming raised a finger in front of her red lips and shushed her softly. "Shoo! Big brother is asleep." Xian quickly took out a thin blanket from her space storage device and covered him with it. Yu and Little Moon hurriedly removed Little Magic and Xiao Xian from his body and moved his legs to the sofa. Bing Er quickly released cold air to lower the temperature in the room. Yun Nuoxing liked cool temperatures. Chu Yingzhan stared blankly at the girl's coordinated actions. Her eyes were dull. "You're all used to this. Used to it, right?" "Yes." Little Star started from the moment he retrieved a small part of Feng Yueying's memories. That eternal nightmare followed. From then on, he could no longer sleep. If he wanted to sleep, he had to have fairy or divine power by his side, which is our power. It's very rare for him to be able to rest. Although he used the Thousand Dreams Sutra to enter a non-sleep state, he occasionally fell asleep. We want him to have a good sleep. Xian nodded. Chu Yingzhan was speechless. She felt a toothache. "You two should hurry up and get married." Xian's pretty face turned red. This Little Star doesn't seem to have that intention. At this point, everyone sighed. She wanted this guy to get married? They would probably have to tie him up and forcefully send him over. Light flickered in the air, causing everyone to look over. Then, they saw Chu Yang and the Cold Woman appear. However, as soon as they arrived, The coldness on Chu Zhongping's face quickly melted. Chu Yeong wanted to say something, but when he saw the person sleeping on the sofa, he was stunned. He subconsciously lowered his voice. Did we come at the wrong time? Ming thought for a moment. She reached out her hand and waved it beside Yun Nuoxing's ear, covering it with a soundproof barrier. Then, she looked up and said, "You can speak now." Chu Yeong smiled bitterly and shook his head. "No. I wanted to ask this little guy what he planned to do tonight and if he needed any help. But seeing that he was asleep, I didn't want to disturb him." Chu Yingzhan thought for a moment. "Dad, take out some nourishing things. This guy will be very weak after he finishes cultivating." Hearing this, Chu Yeong was stunned. Just as he was about to nod, he saw her pretending to be fierce. It was as if she would pounce on him and bite him if he shook his head. He couldn't help but smile and nod. "Don't worry. Dad isn't such a stingy person. If this little guy really has the ability to help, I'll give him everything I have. Money is just a worldly possession. What's the use of it if it can't protect you?" Tch. Chu Yingzhan curled her lips. She didn't feel touched at all. She even rolled her eyes at him. "I forgot that this fool has a lot of good things on him. I don't think he'll like anything in our family." Chu Yeong's face was bitter. He sniffed and lamented, "Chongping, why does Xian dislike me so much now? You don't want Dad anymore after having a little lover. Wah. You can talk nonsense, but you can't eat nonsense. This bastard idiot has nothing to do with me." Chu Yingzhan's beautiful face flushed red. She spoke incoherently and fiercely jumped up. Baring her fangs and brandishing her claws, she pounced towards Chu Yeong. The latter happily caught this little kitten whose fur had exploded. Seeing the father and son suddenly playing around, Chu Zhongping sighed helplessly. "You two can also relax so quickly. There's no use in being nervous. When something is about to happen, if you can't change anything, it's better to calmly welcome it." Ming's lily-white hand gently stroked Yun Nuoxing's colorful hair. Her soft voice was heard. The golden Mei Mao turned and added, "Brother said so." Everyone chuckled. This sentence was really his style. Chu Yeong hugged his daughter who was acting spoiled in his arms. He sighed in his heart. Yes, there was nothing to worry about. What he could do was already the limit. It was originally a dead end. Now, he was just gambling. He was gambling on a possible future. Maybe that little guy could lead them out of this dead end. I've always felt that declaring war is not bad from a strategic point of view. Once we declare war, as long as the other party resists, we can basically wipe them out in one fell swoop. But from a fundamental point of view, not only does it give the enemy time to prepare, it also gives the enemy time to react. This increases the possibility of problems occurring. What if the other party doesn't resist and directly leaves? Night, this place was a mountain range outside the Azure Emperor city. At the peak of the mountain, this mountain peak was sliced horizontally by a saber. The surface of the cut was smooth and there was an additional platform. It was an extremely huge platform. It wouldn't be a problem for tens of thousands of people to sit on it. At this moment, there were thousands of people gathered here. From their auras, they were all mid-stage and high-stage deities. The blue and red moon slowly moved towards the peak. In this season, the moon couldn't reach the peak. That sentence was merely describing the time. The mysterious purple moonlight illuminated the entire world, illuminating a group of people at the very front of the platform. One of them had colorful hair that fluttered in the wind. It was Yun Nuoxing. He looked very spirited, his eyes were shining brightly. Under the moonlight, he appeared even more mysterious. Reputation is all a lie. I'm a person who values life above all else. I can't be bothered with reputation. If there's anyone who disagrees with me, I'll just send them flying with a punch. If I can't defeat them after declaring war, I'll just run away. In this world, survival is the way of the king. Well, although I say so, sometimes I have to give up my life for certain things. Chu Yingzhan glanced at him and said indifferently, "Aren't you talking nonsense? But some people don't think so. I'm just flirting. No matter what, once the matter starts, there won't be time for flirting. After the yin-yang world, I've only rested for a few days. After this matter, if I don't sleep in for a few days, I'll be letting myself down." Yun Nuoshing stretched his body and heaved a sigh of relief. Everyone rolled their eyes at him in annoyance. "Uncle Chu, are you sure that everyone has retreated? Is there really no one in that area?" Yun Nuoshing tilted his head and looked at Chu Yeong. "No problem. By the way, we're also prepared. If something happens, the 6 Emperor Gods will be able to support us for a while." Chu Shin smiled at him. Yun Nuoshing nodded. His colorful eyes reflected a blue light in the void. Chu Yingzhan almost drooled when she saw it. The eye of the ocean, she really wanted one. The Ling Yun Battle Courts team hasn't made any moves. The straight line distance is about 80,000 miles. If an Emperor God moves at full speed, they can come over in the blink of an eye. It's equivalent to close combat. Unfortunately, the attack range of an ordinary Emperor God is not so large. No matter how close combat they are, they have to fly over this distance to use their attack. Yun Nuoshing mumbled. Then, he chuckled and said, "The distance is long enough. If we get any closer, we might be affected. When do we make our move?" A Emperor God looked at Chu Shun and asked, "Wait. When the moon is at the top of the sky and the power of the stars is at its strongest, the moment when it can touch the earth." Yun Nuoshing pointed at the 2 gigantic moons in the sky and chuckled. Everyone raised their heads and muttered to themselves, "The power of the stars?" Yun Nuoshing knelt on the ground, his colorful long hair spread out on the ground, flickering with sparkling starlight. When the power of the stars overflowed, he was like a firefly, releasing a bright light in the night sky. Moreover, it was the bright light of the stars, the light that shone on the god realm from billions of years ago, and the purple moonlight sprinkled on his body, making him look very mysterious. In this quiet night, no one thought about the battle that might happen in the next second. They just wanted to take advantage of the current situation to enjoy a little more peace. Xian and the others were also adjusting their condition. They might need to use their strength later. Although their strength was insignificant in such a battle, as long as Yun Nuoshing asked for it, they would do their best to contribute their strength. A gentle breeze, moonlight, the Azure Emperor City could be faintly seen in the distance. The lights in the city flickered as the night sky became brighter and brighter. The night was mesmerizing, one could feel the flow of time. This tranquil time only lasted for a short 2 hours. When the 2 moons hung high up in the sky, Yun Nuoshing's body flickered with astral light. That pair of colorful eyes that had been closed for 2 hours slowly opened as a soft voice rang out. Void enchantment, lockdown. Purplish-black runes drilled out from the cracks in space, connecting together. There was no sound when space was shattered. Numerous cracks appeared as the purplish-black runes unceasingly gushed out, forming a circle around the mountain peak. After that, the purplish-black runes silently sealed the space. This was the power of the void. It blocked all probing from the outside world. It's time. Glancing at the sparkling astral energy on his body, Yun Nuoshing glanced at the other parts of his body. The divine inscriptions on his body all emitted a bright radiance, as though they had sensed his next move. A boundless surge of energy flowed through the heavens and earth. He could clearly feel the throbbing of the energy. Has it begun? Seeing Qin Wentian standing up, Chu Shun and the others slowly turned their gazes over as they drew in a deep breath. Let's see how big of a surprise this little fellow would bring them. Xian and the others glanced at each other before nodding. After that, they hurriedly retreated. One of them carried Little Magic and Little Immortal, while the other carried Little Moon and Ewer as they turned and ran. It wasn't fun to watch that fellow unleash his full strength. With a wave of his hand, Yun Nuoshing took out the Sun God Bow. He lowered his head and stared at the 8-meter-long bow as he couldn't help but laugh. "Buddy, I'll be depending on you today." Buzz buzz. The sun god bow flashed twice, as if it had a mind of its own as a response. This made Yun Nuoxing a little surprised. Although the sun god bow was a divine level 9 divine artifact, it hadn't reached the level of having a mind of its own. However, after thinking about it carefully, he understood. The sun god bow had been brewing in his body for a long time, and its grade had unintentionally increased a little. Now that he could sense it, it was almost at the level of a level 10 eternal divine artifact. Yun Nuoxing took a deep breath as his body floated into the air. He took off the soul-stabilizing bracelet and floated beside him. His long hair spread out and fluttered even though there was no wind. External energy circuit open. Not all weapons had this kind of external energy circuit. This kind of method was similar to a rare secret technique, and not many people knew about it. However, Yun Nuoxing felt lucky that all the weapons he had this kind of external energy circuit. It was a small design that allowed the divine artifact to borrow the external power of the world to unleash its original power. However, this would overload the divine artifact, and it couldn't be used again for a period of time after it was used. It could only be used with its own power, and it couldn't be used with its full power. Otherwise, it would destroy the divine artifact, and the power of the divine artifact itself would be affected. However, this time, he wanted to open both types of energy circuits at the same time. That was to say, when he opened the external energy circuit, he would also pour all his energy into it. It was as if he was toying with the divine artifact to death. The attack range of the Netherworld Ruins sword wasn't enough. Large-scale energy attacks like magic circles would be noticed by the Magic Circle Grandmaster the moment they gathered energy. If he let him defend with all his strength, it would consume part of his power, and then the result wouldn't be what he wanted to see. Only the sun god Bao could kill the enemy from tens of thousands of miles away without leaving a trace. Full power release. Boom! The soul-anchoring bracelet shattered in an instant. The energy that had accumulated for countless days was completely released at this moment, all of it surging into the sun god Bao. Yun Nuoxing roared, and all of the energy in his body surged out like an ocean. The violent power of the stars condensed into giant stars outside his body, orbiting around him in an orderly manner. In the sky, thousands of stars converged, as if the Milky Way was falling. The brilliant silver light illuminated his tall body, making his starry eyes shine even more brilliantly. His 6 wings spread out, spanning 100 feet. All of the energy in the world seemed to be sucked in by a black hole, constantly falling towards him. The violent transfer of energy created a violent energy storm in the world. The flickering starlight formed thousands of illusory stars, revolving around the giant energy vortex in the air. Ka! The violent energy swept across the sky, tearing open a 1,000-foot-wide spatial crack. The power of the space that came out of the crack suddenly paused, then was sucked in by the chaotic energy vortex in an instant. There was a Tautai beast that devoured energy, and all of the energy in the world couldn't escape. Rumble! The trembling of the space made everyone's expression tremble. Their slightly dazed faces recovered, and when they saw the violent scene, they were stunned again. In the name of Yun Nuoxing, the divine body that receives souls. A voice came out of the energy vortex. It reverberated in the space, and it was full of unconcealable majesty. A roar of the world gradually appeared. The moment the voice fell, the night sky suddenly collapsed, and the void boundary fluctuated. The power of the world, the elemental power, the power of space, the power of time, the power of the rules, the power of the stars, and even the power of the primordial realm. All of the energy that could be used surged madly in that direction. Under the guidance of the crazy energy, the space formed an energy vacuum, and it was almost sucked dry. Everyone even felt that the energy in their bodies was about to burst out of their body. They hurriedly controlled the boiling energy in their bodies, and stared blankly at the person floating in the air. Damn it, is this the aura of a demigod? They must be dreaming. It's coming, it's coming. While everyone was stunned, only Chu Yingzhan's face was flushed red, and Mei Mao was smiling. She was smiling very happily, as if the person who looked like a god or a demon was her. Chapter 968. The sun, the moon, and the stars appeared at the same time. 2 moons and a sun appeared in the sky. The blazing red sun and the light purple flames were like world-destroying flames that burned wildly in this world. Thousands of pillars of starlight flooded this place. Huge arrays appeared from the void. They were arranged in a disorderly manner and were crooked from side to side. However, the center of each array was pointing directly at Yun Nuoxing. Hum! A buzzing sound made this violent space even more violent. 10 arrays of different colors appeared behind Yun Nuoxing. The golden metal element, the green wood element, the blue water element, and the dark element in the center. The 10 arrays hung behind Yun Nuoxing. The black array was directly behind Yun Nuoxing, while the other 9 were slowly revolving around his dark element array. All the elements in this world had already gone out of control. The balance of the elements was broken, and they were being controlled to drill into the elemental arrays. Ha! Yun Nuoxing let out a low growl. 2 sharp teeth were exposed from his tightly pursed lips. The fingernails on his fingers and hands that were holding the bowstring became long and thin. Blue-white hair began to grow from his palms and spread all the way to his forearms. Crimson-red feathers grew from his shoulders. The 6 huge dazzling wings on his back were also wrapped by 6 transparent ice-blue wings. Boom! The brilliant moonlight descended. An icy storm swept over from the 2 extremes of the realm of the gods. It caused ice and fire to burn in this place. Countless energies rose and fell. Dong! The ancient and grand sound of the bell seemed to have been passed down from the ancient mythological era. It had a heavy meaning that crushed the entire era and destroyed the void. Dong! The grand and distant sound of the bell continued to resound. It rang in everyone's heart and the entire void. It wanted the entire world to hear the sound of the giant bell. On the sun god bow, a dazzling pattern lit up, and an immeasurable amount of energy poured into it like an ocean. However, its capacity seemed to have reached limitless at this moment, and it crazily swallowed all the energy that rushed in. That chaotic and terrifying energy began to converge, and slowly, a long arrow appeared on the bowstring held by Yun Nuoxing. The colorful arrow didn't seem to be in the form of energy, nor was it in the form of a crystal. It seemed to be a solid colorful arrow. The turbulent energy on it caused cracks to appear in the space. Wherever the arrow pointed, the space shattered and split into 2. Cracks also appeared in the barrier of time. Even the barrier in the void trembled slightly. The infusion of endless energy made the divine arrow even more resplendent, and its body even more solid. It was no longer a body of energy, and just its existence alone was enough to distort the surrounding space. Even the laws of the realm of the gods could not help but tremble. This energy had been compressed tens of thousands of times, and it was as if the entire mountain range had been compressed to the size of a grain of sand. This arrow had reached a level where it could penetrate the laws of nature. Soul-burning art, 72 times burn. Burn this soul. The moment the scarlet runes appeared on Yun Nuoxing's body, the expressions of all the high-level gods present changed. This uncontrollable energy. This is impossible. How can he control it? With Yun Nuoxing as the center, circles of energy waves came closer and closer to him. With Yun Nuoxing as the center, they pressed down on him continuously. The pressure made the high-level gods look grave. The energy was so chaotic that it made the heavens and the earth lose its color. The experts of the emperor gods present gasped. At that moment, they had all retreated a long distance due to the commotion caused by Yun Nuo-Xing unleashing his full power. They could only watch as the brilliant sea of light occupied their line of sight. In the center of the sea of light there was a person holding a longbow. This is the level he can reach? No wonder you have so much confidence in him, Chu Xin couldn't help but say as he looked at Chu Yingzhan with a drop of cold sweat on his forehead. Hearing this, Chu Yingzhan sneered and waved her hand. She said, "Dad, let me tell you. That guy hasn't risked his life yet. He hasn't unleashed his full power. He's a freak who can kill a god-level expert." At the mention of the legendary level, Chu Xin's eyes trembled. His deep gaze was fixed on Yun Nuo-Xing. When he saw that it was a ball of light, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Is that the 10 elements? The dark element is also there. What a freak. This time, Chu Yingzhan was also stunned. She looked at him in astonishment. "Stupid Dad, you know about the dark element? Of course, I told you about it. It's just that you didn't remember it." Chu Xin nodded. Chu Yingzhan came to a realization. No wonder she felt a sense of familiarity when he mentioned the dark element. It turned out that he had mentioned it before. After coming to a sudden realization, she panicked a little. She knew about the dark element and many secrets of the ancient times. She knew about those who possessed the dark element and even knew about the Yun Nuo planet. Thinking of this, she grabbed Chu Xin's arm and said, "Father, you have to keep this a secret. You have to swear." Chu Xin was stunned. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something and nodded. "No problem. About the dark element. I more or less understood it when I came into contact with it." Therefore, he knew why his daughter was so nervous. Seeing that he nodded, Chu Yingzhan heaved a sigh of relief. However, she was still worried. She pretended to be fierce and said, "You must keep it a secret. You must keep it a secret. If you leak it, I won't come back the next time I go out." "Sure enough, you don't want your dad anymore now that you have a lover." Chu Xin laughed. How could he not see that his daughter was protecting Yun Nuo-Xing? "No, Chu Yingzhan's face turned red. Just as she was about to explain, a huge movement suddenly came from the other side. She quickly turned her gaze. The world had lost its color. The night sky had turned pale white. It was as if even the colors had been swallowed by that place. The arrays had all collapsed and exhausted their energy. The last remaining energy was injected into the sun god Bao. The huge elemental energy gathered in the 10 arrays behind her suddenly surged into the sun god Bao. Like ice cubes being poured into boiling water, the boiling energy storm stabilized at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, everything calmed down. Phew. The violent energy suddenly calmed down. Everyone wiped off their cold sweat and came back to their senses. Their eyes were fixed on the 8-meter-long sun god Bao in Yun Nuo-Xing's hands. A colorful arrow was placed on the bowstring. Although it looked calmer than before, the concentration of energy had reached another level. Even the time barrier was on the verge of collapsing at the place where the arrow was pointed. Chu Yaong's expression was extremely solemn. He could feel an irresistible force from the arrow. If the arrow was pointed at him, he knew that he wouldn't be able to block it. Even if there were 10 of him, it wouldn't be enough. This force was enough to kill an emperor god. Yun Nuo-Xing's colorful hair gradually turned white. Her colorful eyes were filled with ocean blue waves. Her gaze was fixed on the location of the Ling Yun battle court. After a while, she let out a long breath. Her right hand pulled the bowstring to the maximum with all her strength, forming an arc. Finally, she let go of the bowstring with a shout. "Sun-piercing divine arrow." The moment the arrow left his hand, it exploded into several huge energy rings. Under everyone's horrified gazes, it rushed out of the void boundary. In a short moment's time, on the other side of the world, an extremely bright light suddenly blossomed. It was as dazzling as the sun rising from the east, illuminating the night sky with incomparable brightness. Dawn seemed to have arrived in advance. The violent energy ball poured out all of its energy in one breath, forming a massive energy storm that was over 10,000 miles wide. Moreover, it was still expanding. Boom! Boom! The earth-shattering explosion and earth-shaking tremors were delayed for a long time before they could be heard. At the same time, there was also an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation. Ding! A ringing sound came from the end of the world. Then, a monstrous energy, carrying the aura of annihilation, suddenly exploded in the distance at a speed far beyond the speed of light. The aurora of destruction dyed the world pale. Everyone felt as if the whole world was exploding, as if thousands of stars were being destroyed at the same time. The extremely brilliant light temporarily blinded everyone's eyes, almost blinding them. The weaker people's eyes turned red, and they screamed and fainted. They were affected by the impact of the energy just by looking at the place where it hit. Reverse change! Yun Nuoshing roared and his hands danced like lightning. Then, he clapped his hands together and a clear sound suppressed the spread of the energy. Just when everyone thought that the energy explosion was over, the former waved his hands and drew an exaggerated arc in the air. Then, he let out a loud roar. Stars fall. The violent eruption of energy paused for a moment before converging toward the center at a speed that far exceeded the speed of light. The energy that had not been completely released also gathered together with a loud bang. All the aura of annihilation frantically converged, and then condensed into a huge azure array on the ground. Within the array, the aura of stars filled the air, and it was so dense that it almost expelled the air. Ta! With a snap of a finger, a cross-shaped starlight suddenly appeared in the sky above the storm of destruction. An aura that made everyone tremble with fear descended from the sky. Everyone's hearts tightened as they looked up and saw the eternal light in the distance turn into an extremely pure azure light beam descending from the sky. The light beam of destruction that was tens of millions of feet in size carried a power that was enough to sink the sky and earth as it bombarded the earth. The power of the stars condensed on the light beam and exploded into rings of light that gradually expanded and pressed down on the ground. A terrifying shock wave that was like the destruction of stars also swept out from within and spread to the ends of the world at the speed of light. The earth rumbled and collapsed, creating a huge crater. With the expanding starlight beam as the center, the earth sank and disintegrated under the extremely pure energy. Space collapsed, and the time barrier was affected by the aftermath of the energy and collapse. At this moment, the entire 10th province of the Kunyan continent, as well as the dozens of provinces around it, felt the tremors that shook the heavens and the earth. Edited by Lifer, Fingerfox translated by Ciencia World edited by Lifer, Fingerfox translated by Ciencia World. The pillar of light rumbled for a minute, and its range almost extended to the mountain peak where Yun Nuoshing and the others were. In the end, due to the lack of energy, it gradually shrank until only a weak pillar of light was left. Then, with a poof, it extinguished. The pillar of light was extinguished, and only a huge pit was left on the ground in front of them. It covered an extremely large area, and not a single speck of dust flew up. Everything was melted by the extremely pure energy of the pillar of light, and nothing was left. The fracture at the edge of the abyss was a smooth and neat arc. Yun Nuoshing panted rapidly. She had exhausted all her energy, and there was not a single bit of energy left in her body. It was all squeezed out. The feeling of emptiness in her body was really uncomfortable. There was not a single part of her body that was not trembling. Even her vision began to blur and tremble. Boom! Suddenly, an aura surged out from afar. Anyone could feel that extremely violent aura. That person was like an erupting volcano, full of anger. However, underneath the fury, there was a sense of weakness. Yun Nuoshing panted for a while, and the color of her long hair faded away. She also felt that aura and could not help but roll her eyes. It was really not easy to kill a high-level god. It seemed that only the Netherworld Ruins sword could kill her in one go. The power of the star spell after that was determined by the strength of the first strike. It was just a second strike after the energy that had been released was forcefully reversed and condensed again. Next. I'll leave it to you guys. Yun Nuashing panted. Her legs gave way and she was about to fall. Before she fell, a fragrant wind blew in her face. That holy light entered her dry body, and she felt herself being hugged by a soft body. She could not help but smile faintly. She closed her eyes and murmured in a dreamlike voice, "My mission is completed." Almost at the same moment he finished speaking, Chu Yeong and the other god emperors suddenly shot out in a flash. The group of high-level gods also followed after them. They didn't have time to be shocked by the huge destructive power. At this moment, they wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to beat the dog that was down. Not long after, there were bursts of gorgeous energy storms in the distance. Roars that shook the 9 heavens could be faintly heard. The void collapsed, the star region dimmed, and the power of rules surged. A super battle at the level of god emperors had broken out. In the sky, destructive energy waves exploded. The earth-shattering movement startled countless people. They were already frightened by the 2 destructive waves. At this moment, they sensed that there were high-level gods fighting. They could not help but rush over curiously. They all turned into spectators. When they saw the 2 sides of the battle, they could not help but be shocked. Soaring Cloud Battle Court and Chujia. That's War Spirit King and Chujia. War Spirit King is going to be defeated. Damn it, I've already bought peanuts and melon seeds. Isn't the battle only tomorrow? The battle that was supposed to break out tomorrow suddenly broke out tonight. Looking at the situation, there were only 3 late-stage god emperors left in Soaring Cloud Battle Court. At this moment their auras were weak. The power of rules and energy were constantly leaking out of their bodies. It was as if they were seriously injured and on the verge of death. These 2 giants, one of them was a veteran force, and the other was a newcomer. The difference in strength between the 2 was huge. However, from the looks of it, Chu Jie had an overwhelming victory. This was a fantasy. This result scared the spectators so much that they did not dare to speak. It seemed like Chu Jie also had a backup plan. Otherwise, how could the overlord of the 10th state, Soaring Cloud Battle Court, be in such a miserable state? Roar! Roar! War Spirit King gave his all and fought a bloody battle. However, he was already very tired. His entire body was filled with a dense star aura. It was like a maggot that nibbled at his body and wanted to melt him. He also had to resist Chu Jie's crazy killing technique. In the end, he was gradually defeated by Chu Jie's fierce attacks. Chu Jie took the opportunity to grab his soul and burn it to ashes. His body that was covered in blood fell from the sky lifelessly. This result made the spectators shudder. This result was really out of everyone's expectations. They thought that Chu Jie would be defeated quickly. They did not expect this result. Cough. You are a scourge. We should not have been soft-hearted and let you grow. Those pedantic and stubborn old people did not agree to send high-level gods to eliminate you. In the end, you became a little dragon. Ah, the heavens are really going to destroy my Soaring Cloud Battle Court. The last remaining Emperor God was surrounded by a group of people. He covered his injured left arm and stared at Chu Yeong with resentful eyes. He laughed bitterly. I only have myself to blame. From the beginning to the end, I did not provoke you. It was you who kept expanding the situation because of a little bit of resentment. Now it has reached this point. Chu Yeong put his hands behind his back and looked at that person's life force that was constantly fading away. He said lightly, "We were just forced to fight back." That person laughed inexplicably. His whole body was trembling. Then, his eyes suddenly became fierce. He stared at Chu Jie and the others with a ferocious expression. I am not satisfied with today's defeat. This is definitely not an attack from you. None of the 6 of you can perform such an attack. No one. No one. This, of course, was not performed by us. We asked the little guy to help us. Chu Jie smiled faintly and said, to be honest, he also scared me. I did not expect him to be able to do this. It was too shocking. I was almost scared to death. Who? There is no harm in telling you. Since you are going to die anyway, I don't want you to die with regret. Chu Jie smiled faintly and said, that little guy is called Yun Nuoxing. He is the spiritual godly physique of this era. He is a friend of my daughter. After that, the last great supreme god of Ling Yun Battle Court coughed out a mouthful of black blood. His eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. His body was trembling, and he was on the verge of death. Chu Yeong waved his hand, and immediately, someone rushed forward and destroyed the great supreme god of Ling Yun Battle Court's soul with a single palm strike. The great supreme god of Ling Yun Battle Court was dead. Up until now, the battle between Ling Yun Battle Court and Chu Jie had ended in such a comical and shocking manner. Zhan Ling Wang and Chu Jie had not expected that a little guy who was not related to them would be able to forcefully turn the situation around. The 2 attacks had hit him right in the heart. He had not felt this way for many years, and it made his heart palpitate. This time we owe him a favor. An emperor god walked forward and looked at the bottomless abyss. His hands trembled slightly and he quickly looked away. He could not help but sigh as he looked at Chu Jie. Chu Jie nodded and said, that little guy is truly amazing. Today, he has slaughtered more than 100,000 gods. It's nothing now, but the path after he reaches the initial god realm is not a small problem. If we don't handle it well, it will become a calamity. The person beside him started and instantly understood what he wanted to say. He smiled and nodded. There's a heaven harmony pill in the treasure pavilion. It can cleanse the negative effects caused by killing too many gods. If Realm Lord doesn't mind, I'll go get it and send it to little brother. Chu Jie coughed lightly and nodded. You can bring it to me. I'll send it over to him. Hearing this, that person laughed and clasped his hand. Chu Jie waved his hand and said softly to the others, now that the main force of the Ling Yun Battle Court has left, their headquarters should be defenseless. Although they just experienced a battle, they didn't expend too much energy. You all can go and take a look. However, be careful and don't be greedy and lose people. That little guy fought so hard to obtain a great victory for us, we have to cherish it. Everyone nodded. With a sway of their bodies, they flew towards the same direction. Chu Jie turned his head and looked in the direction of the Azure Emperor City as he slowly walked back there. In that case, I'll go back and check on the situation of that little guy. He seems to have expended quite a lot of energy. Chapter 969. Even the darkness of the night couldn't stop the news of the great victory of the Battle of Chu Jie from spreading out. In the middle of the night, the Azure Emperor City suddenly lit up with countless flames, giving off a feeling of the early evening. Just by looking at this scene, who would know that it was already late at night? The 2 earth-shattering explosions of energy startled everyone in the 10th prefecture of the Kuan Plains. It even affected the neighboring prefectures. The incomparably violent energy shockwaves swept across the horizon, tearing apart space. Anyone with a little bit of vigilance wouldn't pretend to be dead at this time. Therefore, the scene of the Battle Spirit King's death was witnessed by everyone. Chu Xun and Chu Jie's reputation would probably soar as well. No one could link it to the Divine Body, and no one knew that it was the work of the Divine Body, other than Chu Xun himself and his sister. However, there were also some meticulous people who understood the Chu Jie at the same time. They felt the unusual energy fluctuation and began to match it with the people of the Chu Jie, hoping to find the person who launched such a powerful attack. In the end, they realized that they couldn't match the person, so they could only helplessly attribute it to the trump card of the Chujia. In any case, this mysterious battle had an unprecedented scale. It had the most confusing process and the most unexpected ending. It became an interesting story to talk about after a meal. Or rather, it was a strange thing. In this world, there was a kind of existence called insiders. There were already more than 10 versions of the story made up by them. Each and every one of them was very convincing, almost making the people of the Chujia believe it. However, Chu Shen ordered them to keep their mouths shut and not spread it outside. The people of the Chujia could only suppress the urge to slap those who made up stories. As for the onlookers who didn't know the truth, many of them were fooled into believing it. The battle between the two forces was not over yet. The important forces of the Ling Yun battle court had all fallen in one night. In the wee hours of the morning, those who wanted to go to the headquarters of the battle court gathered together. In the end, there was nothing left. Some people found traces of the battle between the divine emperors. They speculated that at least 3 divine emperors had fallen. As for who the 3 divine emperors were, they were not sure. As for Yun Nuoxing, who was not the main character in this matter but contributed greatly, she was still lying in bed after a day had passed. Last night, she woke up for a while, but the weakness and drowsiness that came from her body made her fall asleep again in less than 5 minutes. Anyway, the recovery of the spiritual godly body was spontaneous. Given some time, she would be able to return to her peak state. Xian and the others could see that her long hair was gradually regaining its color, which made everyone heave a sigh of relief. This meant that at least she was not injured and was purely exhausted. Otherwise, her vitality would not have recovered so easily. It's been a day, and the little guy is still sleeping? In the hall of Chu Yingzhan's small palace, Chu Shun and Chu Zhangping sat on the sofa and sipped very fragrant tea. Chu Zhangping glanced at the second floor from time to time. They did not do anything else for the day. After the battle, the aftermath of the battle was left to his second brother and third uncle. He continued to be a hands-off boss. Anyway, this time, they did not lose a single person in the battlefield, so there was nothing special to be busy about. They just had to take over the territory of the Lingyun battle court and take inventory of the things they had collected from the Lingyun battle court. In the hall, Little Moon and Yuer were running around with Little Purple Soul in their arms. Qin Yen and Bing Er looked at each other. The two had been motionless for 5 hours like 2 statues. Nightmare pulled Chu Chen aside and bragged, talking about the past Yun Nuoxing. Chu Chen was so excited that his eyes were sparkling. Chu Xianling listened attentively at the side without saying a word. Her sparkling eyes showed that she was very interested. Only Yuan she sat alone in front of Chu Yeyang and Chu Zhangping, calmly drinking tea. You'll get used to it. That guy likes to injure himself all over and play with his life every day. However, he has a good physique and recovers quickly. Usually, he can be fully recovered after 2 or 3 days of rest. Yuan Shi poured tea for the two of them and took a sip himself. He sighed and said, "I've gotten used to it." Chu Shen was a little speechless when he heard this. It was one thing for him to get used to playing with his life, but how could his companions get used to it? How much did that guy like to play with his life? However, the battle results that he obtained in exchange for his full strength were also quite frightening. As a demigod, he only used a divine bow that was comparable to a 10th-level eternal divine weapon to wipe out the enemy. Out of 13 divine emperors, only 3 were left. Moreover, all of them were heavily injured. It was much more serious than what he had said at the beginning. They were not left with only 40% of their battle strength, but were hanging on by a thread. Chu Xianling listened to Nightmare talk about the past of Yun Nuoxing. From time to time, she would look in the direction of the second floor. After pondering for a while, she turned her gaze away. When Yuan Shi saw this, he put down his teacup and said with a smile, If you're worried, why don't you go and take a look? Chu Xianling was taken aback. He hurriedly shook his head and said, Forget about me. Sister is also inside. There's also Sister Xian and Sister Ming. If you go and see him, he will appear nonchalant on the surface. However, he will still be quite happy on the inside. Little Star is very shy. If so many people see him in such a sorry state, he will feel embarrassed. That's why he's forcing a stiff expression, Yuan, she said softly. Chu Xianling fell silent. After a while, as though he was cheering himself on, he took a deep breath and nodded. He got up and walked to the second floor. Yuan Shi and Nightmare could not help but laugh sinisterly. When Little Moon saw this, she wrinkled her nose and reminded her softly, If brother finds out, he will beat you up. Then, let's just not let him know. Yuan Shi chuckled as he glanced at the second floor, and saw Chu Xianling push open the door and walk in. Chu Chen suddenly said from the side, What about my aunt? Brother Yun is now, what happened? At the mention of Chu Zhangping, Chu Yeong also came to his senses. He straightened his body and looked at Chu Chen, then at Chu Zhangping. Didn't the immortal fruit you brought back previously suppress the hidden danger? What happened? Brother Yun said that this suppression is only temporary. He has a way to completely resolve this matter. However, the methods that he mentioned previously were quite scary. Chu Chen shrunk his neck and quickly answered his father, telling him everything. When he finished, even Chu Shin could not help but tremble. He could not maintain his composure. These methods were akin to playing with one's life. This kid was good at playing with his life, but was he good at playing with other people's lives? Brother, it's fine. Little Yun said that he does not intend to use such dangerous methods, Chu Zhangping said softly as he pressed his hand gently. Then tell me, what method does he intend to use to help you resolve this problem? Chu Yeong frowned. This matter concerned Chu Zhangping, so he had to be more careful. He was worried that Yun Nuoxing's methods would harm her. Devil Nightmare waved his hand and chuckled. Don't worry. After all, the boss is a heaven. Spirit receiving godly body. Everything he knows about energy is not even comparable to a high-level god. He is a true master of energy. You can leave this problem to him. Well, I can roughly guess. Little Star said that he would resolve it while he was at it. I guess. He wants to bring Miss Chu to a place, Yuan Shi said as he supported his head with one hand. His eyes were shining. Oh! Nightmare raised his eyebrows. Is it there? That's right. Speaking of, by the way, it should be there. Yuan Shi nodded. Oh there. That thing is there. Maybe it has some special uses. What the two of them guessed was naturally the location of the Pillar of Genesis. Not only that, their guesses weren't wrong. This was the main purpose of Yun Nuoxing's visit to the Azure Emperor city. He merely wanted to help Chu Yingzhan settle the troubles of her clan and bring Chu Zhangping there to resolve this unprecedented phenomenon. Although I don't really understand what you are talking about. Chu Yeong's frown gradually loosened. There shouldn't be a problem if you bring me along, right? I'm worried about Zhangping's condition. After speaking, he glared at Chu Zhangping. This lass had disappeared by herself some time ago, scaring the soul out of the people of the music world. Although he wasn't too worried about her, her condition wasn't good at all. Occasionally, she would even faint due to energy fluctuations. There were thousands of what-if situations when she ran away from home. However, he couldn't be bothered to teach this lass a lesson. Their entire family, from top to bottom, loved to run away without saying a word. If one of them disappeared one day, they could only stare blankly because they would never know where that person ran off to. Chu Zhangping shrunk her head and stuck out her tongue. Brother, you are usually busy. I can only go out by myself. Although her tone was calm, everyone could hear the hidden bitterness in her voice. It was as though she was complaining that her brother was too busy and neglected her sister. Chu Yeong laughed dryly. Sigh, it's not fun to stay in the music world every day. I see that Xian is quite happy with little Yun. If this problem can be resolved, I will also go out with Xian to play. Chu Zhongping turned her head and flicked her long hair as she snorted. Chu Yeong was speechless. He was so conflicted that his face was distorted. Looking at the siblings, Yuan Shi spread his hands and said, "Well, it shouldn't be a problem. It's just that this matter is of great importance. Well, if seniors can keep their mouths shut, little Star probably won't mind. Or rather, he won't mind. In any case, you will only bring trouble to yourselves if you speak of it. Our whereabouts are unknown, and no one will be able to find us. Don't worry, we know what to say and what not to say." Chu Yeong nodded. That's right. There's also the matter of the Immortal King Valley. Where is it? Boss also has to make a trip there and take away the Immortal King battle song. Nightmare looked at Chu Chun and said, "The Immortal King Valley has one of the Immortal Emperor's 9 songs, the Immortal King battle song?" Chu Yeong was somewhat surprised. He had also been to that place before, but he didn't gain anything. It could only be said that he wasn't fated to do so. After all, the Immortal King Valley had existed for a very long time. Every year, many people would enter, but no one had gained anything special. At most, they would gain some enlightenment after hearing the shocking melody. Probably. After all, the name is a little coincidental. We don't know the specifics. It was Little Star and Chu Yingzhan who told us. Little Star speculated that it might be the Immortal King battle song. We will know when we go there. Yuan Shi scratched his head. Chu Yeong nodded. The Immortal King Valley is in the mountain range outside the Azure Emperor City. Oh, don't be so nervous. It's not the mountain range that was destroyed by that brat. It's the other side. Yuan Shi's countenance changed. After that, he heaved a sigh of relief. He had a strange feeling in his heart. If the Immortal King Valley was really within the range of Yun Nuoxing's attack, what would he do if he knew about it? Maybe nothing would happen. At most, he would sigh at the fact that there was something missing in this world. After that, he would turn and leave. He didn't head to the Immortal King Valley with an absolute goal in mind. Everything would be up to fate. After quietly lying down for another day, Yun Nuoxing, who was sleeping, it was unknown whether it was because he had already recovered or because he was being stared at by the 4 beauties. In any case, he woke up early in the morning the next day. The moment he woke up, he saw Xian, Ming, Chu Yingzhan and Chu Xianling all staring at him. Feeling a little dizzy, he abruptly lay back down. It must be because I woke up in the wrong way. After mumbling to himself, Yun Nuoxing let out a light roar as he sprang up. After that, he saw Xian and Ming walking over. 2 pairs of Mei Mao looked at him and asked, "Are you feeling better?" It didn't seem to be an illusion. Yun Nuoxing bitterly laughed in his heart. Taking in a deep breath, he patted his face with both hands and nodded. After which, he frowned and shook his head. This caused the 4 beauties to be at a loss. Was he feeling better or not? "I'm fine." Seeing the worry in their eyes, Yun Nuoxing spoke in a light voice. After which, with a wave of his hand, he took out an 8-meter-long piece of charcoal and placed it on the bed. At the 2 ends of the charcoal, there were 2 strings made from an unknown material. This is... However, Xian soon discovered that something was wrong. This wasn't charcoal. This was the divine weapon he used that night. How did the sun god bow end up like this? Ming was startled. Her jade hands touched the body of the bow that had already turned into charcoal. Mei Mao trembled and said, "The overload of energy caused the divine weapon to go berserk. This is broken." Yun Nuoxing nodded and gently rubbed the black charcoal with his palm. There were even cracks in the middle of the charcoal. He had no doubt that with just a little bit of force, he could break it into a few pieces. That night, the external and internal energy circuits were activated together. In addition to the ability of the soul absorption godly body, I used 4 times the strength of the divine weapon. But how should I say this? Yun Nuoxing's eyelids drooped slightly, after which, he could not help but chuckle. You are indeed a late-stage God-Emperor. You were actually able to hurriedly put up a defense at the moment when the light element assassination came. At that time, at least 5 God-Emperors used all their defenses. That was why they were not shot down by the arrow. Xian and the others' expressions changed slightly. Under such circumstances, there was actually someone who could react and put up a defense? After a while, Yun Nuoxing finally put away the broken sun god Bao. He let out a light breath and said, "It seems that it will take some time to repair itself. In the future, it's better to be careful when using the external energy circuits of the divine weapon. Other than divine weapons, no other divine weapon can withstand 4 times the power of the divine weapon. This is determined by the material. The soul absorption godly body allowed the divine weapon in the body to slowly upgrade. It also allowed the material of the divine weapon to upgrade. Just as he thought before, it was a carrier for nurturing weapons. Perhaps because it had not completely upgraded, the power of the sun god Bao was comparable to the 10th level. Its energy core seemed to have reached the 10th level. However, the material of the divine weapon itself was only between the 10th and the 9th level, which caused it to be damaged. If the Nethervoid sword had used such an attack, it would not have been damaged. The latter's material was very high, exceeding the 12th level. However, there were many problems with the core of the divine weapon and many other factors, which caused its grade to drop. Its power was also not as strong as before, which was the exact opposite of the sun god Bao. The upgrading of the material is much slower than the upgrading of the core. Well, it's normal. This is equivalent to cultivating a 9th level material to the 10th level. It's normal for the speed to be slow. It's already very heaven-defying to have such a function. No wonder the soul absorption godly body has been hunted down since ancient times. It's probably because of this reason, Yun Nuoxing said in his heart. After waking up, Chu Yingzhan did not look good. He quickly dragged his sister out of the room. Before closing the door, he looked at Yun Nuoxing, Xian, and Ming with a very ambiguous look. He laughed evilly and then closed the door. Did that girl eat something wrong? Yun Nuoxing watched the door close and rolled his eyes. After waking up, he tossed and turned for a while. The soul fixation bracelet was still brewing in his body, and it would take another day. It would take a total of 3 days for it to come out. In other words, the divine artifact he used to tie his hair was gone. His long hair scattered all over the bed. Yun Nuoxing was dumbfounded. Xian and Ming were also at a loss. The 3 of them were busy combing the colorful hair that was a little more than 10 feet long. They were a little flustered. Xian and Ming's hair was also very long. Usually, it reached their thighs. Even if they straightened it, it barely reached their knees, so it was not that difficult for them to comb it. However, Yun Nuoxing's hair was strangely long. Usually, it would reach her calves when tied with the soul fixation bracelet. Now, it was spread out and dragged on the ground. The 3 of them were busy combing the hair for half an hour. Yun Nuoxing was basically making trouble. When the 2 girls were done, he waved his hand and messed up again. In the end, he was ordered by the angry Xian and Ming to stop moving. Only then did he obediently sit still. Then, the 2 girls thought for a while and came up with a solution. First, they rolled the hair into a ball at the back of their head. Then, they tied the long hair that hung down with 2 ribbons. One was tied at the shoulder and the other was tied at the knee. The ball of hair in the middle bulged out. It's like 2 pieces of lotus root. Yun Nuoxing's eyes widened when he looked in the mirror. The hair by his ears was tied into 2 bunches by 2 purple ribbons. They hung down from his chest to his feet. The end of the hair on his back spread out like a flower. Forget it. I'll make do with it. Yun Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he put away the mirror. He had a helpless expression on his face. I still don't know what the godly body will look like in the future. Did the godly bodies of the previous godly bodies also grow hair? How did they deal with it? Xian and Ming shrugged cutely. Who knew? In short, he walked out of the hall with this appearance. When everyone saw him, they all spat out a mouthful of tea in unison. They were dumbfounded. Was this the most fashionable outfit nowadays? After hearing Yun Nuoxing's explanation, everyone let out a long oh. However, their eyes couldn't move away from the lotus root on his back. This was too funny. Moreover, it looked a little beautiful for some reason. Yun Nuoxing expressed his helplessness. The hair was dragging on his heels. He would kick it when he walked. If he stepped on it, he would probably fall flat on his face on the spot. The others found it comical, but Xiao Huan and Xiao Xian seemed to have discovered something. Their eyes lit up. The two little fellows jumped into the bundle of hair behind Yun Nuoxing and burrowed in. They even stuck their heads out to greet everyone. Then they shrank back. That place had become a hiding place for the two little fellows. Yun Nuoxing looked up and sighed. Why don't we lie down for another day? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.